And we are live.
And we are live, guys. SEOcharity conference. Yeah, I will call it conference, not a live stream, because we do have a separate single live stream. SEOcharity March 2025 is open, and as usual, I'll just steal a couple of minutes, explain the project. If you don't know about that, and after that, we already have Martin here waiting just down there. Okay, so the project is SEOcharity. It is charity. Charity part is we collect money to help small shelters for cats and dogs in Ukraine. Cats and dogs, okay, it's cats and no dogs. Here, as is a charity, things and SEO is SEO. We based on your trust. We hope you trust us. It's based on SEO community, so most of the donors are SEO professional or SEO companies. So it's more or less it's the project exists for more than 3 years, started in March 2022 after the full-scale war started. So we collect money and we send this money to, right now we help permanently 5 small shelters, and it's about 300 animals. When I said small, it's not small, not like five cats. No, like one of them had 120 cats, and the cats not in cages. They're basically in apartments. So cats has a reasonable life. Probably better life than the owner of the shelter, trying to pass this 120 cats. So if you can donate, fantastic, donate. If you cannot donate, you can share it with your friends and with the friends of our friends and the friends of the friends and everything. And I probably won't go ahead and do more, but I really have to say thank you to our sponsors. Any chance we can have our sponsors on the screen?
Just a moment. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Can we remove this small? Yeah. Okay. Our sponsors. Search Engine Journal, we don't have to tell anyone what Search Engine Journal is. It's probably the main source of information for SEO professionals, especially after Search Engine Land has been sold to SEMrush. We have Link House. All the links are on our page. Go to SEOcharity.com, click on the link. Please do check their services because those people, those donors, gave us substantial amount of money. It will help us to provide for shelters for 4 months. So please do go and check the service. Link House, probably name says it's all about links. Olive Street Design is agency in Chicago area, and this agency actually developed and maintain our website SEOcharity.com. SEOranking is Ukrainian-based company, where it's great SEO tool. If you are a SEO professional, go and check SEOranking. It's fantastic tool. Well, Majestic is probably the oldest SEO tool. I'm not trying to push to just put SEO ranking against Majestic. Check Majestic as well. Some people usually use several tools. So Majestic is one of the oldest SEO and most respected SEO tool. Citation Labs. Go and check it. It's all about links. Citation Lab. Kandur is a brilliant and fantastic agency, but it's here because Kandur actually create our logo. We have a new logo. And Mark Williams Cook from Kandur will be here later today. Search Atlas, go and please do check what Search Atlas does, what's their service. They're fantastic sponsors. They gave us money, so we please do go into this and check it. Mosquito Digital, it's a digital agency.
Yes,
Alessia saying me to wrap up. Mosquito Digital, it's okay. Mosquito digital agency based in Barcelona. Restream, it's a streaming platform which we use right now. Okay, Alessia, I'm done.
Oh,
And
hello.
hello, Martin. I'm very happy to see you here. One of the reasons is not only because you are my favorite Googler, but also because you are a favorite Googler of many, many people. I know that in some circles, Googlers are not very popular. I don't know why, because I think you are the most helpful in the industry. But I don't know any single person who wouldn't like Martin Splitt. Because Martin is always producing not only amazing content, but it's very kind personality, is always helpful, is always helping us to understand what's going behind the scenes, especially with those JavaScript things and all those very technical terms that no one understands, but we need to know how they function. And I'm really happy about the topic we've got today from Martin, and it's Debugging JavaScript website. So I will not, without further ado, because we have very limited time, I'm passing the word to Martin. Martin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Something just came off of the microphone. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for having me, and also thank you so much for doing this. I think the SEO for Charity here is fantastic. I'm really excited to be part of it, and I'm trying to fix my microphone things. Anyway, it's broken. It's okay. If you hear noises from my mouth, then you have to deal with this. I'm so sorry. That hasn't happened before. Yeah. So can we bring up the slides? Then we can get into it, because I'll try my best to not take ages for this, but I'm terrible at not doing that. So I'm trying my best. Let's talk about debugging JavaScript. Again, thanks a lot for having me. Excited to be here, and you are too kind, because there's plenty of people who hate me, and I think that's fine. If they don't have other hobbies, I think that's a reasonable thing to do. At least, don't hate on cats. Cats are amazing. Hate on me if that helps. So let's talk about JavaScript and how to debug websites that have JavaScript problems. As you probably know, or as you should have seen in the past 7 years at this point, JavaScript is part of the web and is part of the process that a website goes through before you see something on the screen. And as such, in Google search, we have to deal with it as well. And so it is part of our rendering process. Every website gets rendered. Whenever we crawl, at some point, we also render. And then whatever comes back from that is used in indexing. So inside rendering, what happens there is that JavaScript is executed. So JavaScript can change what is in your website. It can remove content. It can add content. It can change content. And that is what we use for indexing later on. So you do want to know what JavaScript does in order to understand what will be the rendered HTML that we use for indexing. And if something isn't there in this stage of indexing, then we can't put it in the index. If it's not in the index, it can't be ranked. So you do want to actually make sure that you understand what your JavaScript does and how the rendered HTML looks like. Very fundamentally, a lot of people are still looking at view source or at the source code of the website. That is not what we use for indexing. We use the rendered HTML. The HTML that you look at when you do a view source operation, for instance, is whatever your server has produced. It gets sent over to the client. In the client, JavaScript runs, changes that HTML potentially, doesn't have to, but potentially does. And then that actually is generated as the DOM tree, and that it can be turned back into HTML, and that's what we use. So you want to look at rendered HTML rather than the source HTML. I'll give you an example of that. Here's the website that, if you look at the view source, looks okay, but it uses client-side rendering. Client-side rendering changes the content fundamentally, and then in search results, you see something like an error occurred rather than the actual site link that you want in this case. That can have multiple reasons. In this specific case, what happens is that client-side rendering requires a certain way of server configuration that causes a website to show an error to the user, and the developer is like, done, we have an error page, we're good here. So if I go to a website that doesn't, or to a page on a website that doesn't exist, in this case, lol, what, no, then I end up on an error page and everything is fine, right? Except that shows up in search. Why did this get indexed? It shouldn't have gotten indexed. There's a link somewhere to this page. We followed it, we crawled it, we rendered it, we got this content, but somehow it still made it into the index. Why? How did that happen? Well, if you look then at the way that the website is built and the server is configured, you find that JavaScript kicks in after the server responds, and the server needs to respond with something so that the JavaScript can actually do something. So instead of responding with 404, in this case, it just responds with 200, no matter what the URL looks like, and always shows a page depending on what the JavaScript execution does. So either it fetches the content, client-side rendering, or it doesn't. If it doesn't fetch the content, we end up with a 200, but an error page. And this is exactly what happened here. So you want to make sure that your error pages actually expose an HTTP error code as well. So the crawler immediately knows, oh, okay, so there's nothing here. We don't need to spend more time on this. So the problem here is the 200 error response code. The problem there is also exacerbated by the JavaScript being the one who drives the content. So is this an error page or is this the actual content? And you can see that here that like it loads the thing immediately and then the scripts run. And as the scripts are the ones that figure out if this is an error or not, it's too late to just have the server send a 404 or something. The server just doesn't know if this is an actual page or not. And that's oftentimes the case in single page application setups. So make sure that your server is set up correctly, because you can set this up correctly. You just need to know how. And, you know, like all this JavaScript here is great and lovely, but the problem started at the get-go where we gave a 200. It's not impossible to fix this. You just need to think about how can we restructure our application, or how can we reconfigure our server. In this case, this was an application that was hosted on what's called a static hosting platform. The problem there was that the hosting platform didn't know if something is an existing URL or not. So they had to kind of fix the way that it does error reporting so that it always plays out a 200 OK, and that was not exactly great. So what can we do? Well, your hosting solution needs to provide you with a way to deal with that differently, at least for one URL. If you don't know how to troubleshoot this, you should always start in the testing tools that Search Console gives you. So if you see something like this on the site of yours, you can type in the URL and go to URL inspection tool, and there you can click on view crawled page. Once you've clicked on view crawled page, you don't want to look at the screenshot or anything. The screenshot is irrelevant. What you want to look at is the HTML. This HTML is not the source HTML. This is the rendered HTML after JavaScript execution that we saw once we rendered. Okay? So here we can check if we see the content that we looked for, or if this is like a whoops or something like that. So we can use the search function. We can also copy it out and paste it into a code editor that we like, and then like look at the HTML more closely. But whatever content you might be missing, or whatever thing you might not be sure of, you will find it in the rendered HTML, not in the screenshot, nothing else. It's the rendered HTML in the URL inspection tool in Search Console that will tell you what we saw. And if we now find out, oh bugger, we actually see a whoops, this doesn't exist, and we see an HTTP 200 code, we can find that one, the 200 code, if you click on more info, and then in resources, you will see that your server responded with a 200 OK, even though it's an error problem. And if you're not sure if it's JavaScript or not, then generally check, is the content in the rendered HTML that you expect? If the content looks like what do you expect, it's very unlikely a JavaScript problem, then it's something else. If the content is missing or is not the content you expect, check in the resources tab in the more info and then resources if all the resources, especially the JavaScript, has loaded. If images don't load, that doesn't matter, or CSS files. But JavaScript files, if they have been roboted away, or if there's other problems why they're not loading, then that tells us, or tells you in that case, that it might actually be a JavaScript problem because some JavaScript didn't load, some content wasn't included. And last but not least, check that the HTTP code is correct. If all of these apply, if you have the JavaScript run, if everything is in the rendered HTML, if the HTTP status is correct, then it probably isn't, or very likely isn't, a JavaScript problem. Otherwise, it might be. So content is missing. The very first port of call, if content is missing, is the URL inspection tool. And then afterwards, you can probably go into your browser dev tools. The developer tools in your browser are amazing. They have so much information and so much useful stuff in there. It's sometimes a bit hidden on where to look for, or like where you're going to find the information that you look for. But generally, your browser tools are an amazing source of everything. So, number one, in the Elements tab, which is usually the default tab that opens when you open the developer tools in your browser, that is an HTML representation of the rendered HTML of the DOM tree. So whenever this changes due to JavaScript, this will be actually reflected in the Elements tab. If you go to the Sources tab, you see what the server sent initially. That's the source HTML. So here in Elements, you see what the website is actually at this point in time looking like. And that's the DOM that turns into rendered HTML if Googlebot is involved. So you can use that to figure out, is the content here? Is the content here? Is the content missing? Why is it missing? Well, if it's missing, then we have to actually go hunt the reason why. If you find it in Elements, that's great. That's where it should be. But you don't know at this point if it has been generated by JavaScript or if this has been sent by the server. But as I said, you just go to Sources, check the HTML there, check for the content. If the content is not in the Sources tab, in the index HTML, for instance, then that tells you, oh, okay, so this must have been injected by JavaScript. So JavaScript does play a role. If it's in the source HTML already, then even there, JavaScript isn't the problem. Then something else went wrong. That's why the content is missing in the rendered HTML in Google Search Console. But if it's there in the original HTML, that's very, very unlikely to happen. If it happens, something is very, very fishy. Then probably a server configuration or A/B testing or a CDN caching issue is going on. So it's not JavaScript, it's something server-side that is not, or well, server-side or in the middle that is not working well. But if it is not in the source HTML, that means that you need to investigate further. Where from JavaScript is it coming? Well, conveniently, again, in the developer tools, we can find out if JavaScript actually loaded a piece of content. So for instance, in this website, we're looking at images. In the network tab, you see when the image was loaded, if it was loaded, how long it took, where it came from, all this kind of stuff. You see the HTTP headers, all that stuff is there. None of that is relevant for us at this point. What is interesting is you can right-click on the columns in the table, and you can select to be shown the initiator. The initiator is what loaded it. So that might actually be index HTML, so then it was not JavaScript injected. But if it's JavaScript injected, you can actually see in the initiator which piece of JavaScript and where in that piece of JavaScript did it actually get pulled into the content. So you can find out which specific piece of JavaScript is actually doing the work to actually get that content in. And that's really helpful because then you can make an adjustment as to like, why is this not working? Is this specific JavaScript available to us? Is this blocked by robots.txt? These kind of things. And in this case, it's sometimes tricky to nail it down a little further because developers oftentimes use what's called build tool. And then they pull all sorts of JavaScripts into what they call bundles. And then in the bundle, it's hard to trace back where it actually came from, like which team it was or which specific piece of the bundle. But this information already tells you, okay, I need to talk to the developers. And then you can show them this specific resource is loaded by this piece of JavaScript, and maybe they can help you figure out what's going on in that piece of JavaScript that makes it not work with Google search. So at this point, you will have to talk to a developer or a more technical person to help you figure out what's going on, especially when build tools are involved. If you're lucky, you already see that this is a third-party JavaScript file, and you can talk to their support, or you can just, for the time being, remove that third-party JavaScript and see, like a tracker, for instance. Oh, we are using this external tool to do something, and the content is missing, and this specific piece of JavaScript loads it, but that specific piece of JavaScript is not owned by us, it's owned by someone else, so I need to talk to them, which is a starting point for a conversation that will hopefully fix the problem for you. So what do we know now? Well, I've tried my best to like make it quick. I didn't know how much blah blah I would do here, so I had a pretty good evening so far, I think. So I'd like to summarize here. You need to know where something is coming from. If it is coming from JavaScript, if it is coming from JavaScript, does it come from our JavaScript or does it come from a third party? In this case, we know it does come from JavaScript. The image is only inserted in the Elements tab. It's not there in the source HTML tab. In this case, we know it's coming from main.js. Main.js is probably our own JavaScript, so I probably need to talk to developers because this thing has been minified. It's all in a single line. It's unreadable to me. But maybe on dev side, on the developer side, on the staging version, we can find out why this is not happening in Google search. And sometimes the developer looks at the code and immediately goes, oh yeah, that's the problem. If they don't, then try to ask them to explain to you what the code does in very broad terms. So for instance, they might say like, oh yeah, so you can see if the user scrolls, this image gets loaded by JavaScript, and you're like, wait. Googlebot doesn't scroll. Do we have something that loads this image if there's no scrolling happening? And then the developer says no. And then you're like, aha, so this is why Googlebot doesn't see it, because Googlebot doesn't scroll. This code loads the file only when it's being scrolled. All right, there we have it. So sometimes it can be really easy. Sometimes it's a lot harder to debug these things. Sometimes there's like layers that the developers have to go through to find the culprit. But this kind of thing gets the conversation going that actually helps. If you want to test these kind of things with your developers, there's also solutions to build what's called a local tunnel. So from their developer machine, they can put it on the internet and then use, for instance, the rich results testing tool to actually find out what the rendered HTML looks like. So you don't have to like deploy to production and hope for it. You can actually do this iteratively over and over and over again, thanks to something like a local tunnel, or the mobile friendly test no longer exists, I think, but you know, the rich results test would be a replacement. So that's making it a lot faster and easier to debug with. Okay, let's talk about a few common problems before I run out of time. I think I have 10 minutes left. Sometimes developers try to be very creative. So here we see a piece of code that actually creates a structured data JSON LD block based on some API call, basically. So they are downloading like something with JavaScript and then use that JavaScript to create the JSON LD block in their markup, which sounds great, but you know, sometimes it doesn't really work like that. So for instance, when the logo JSON is actually blocked by robots.txt, then you wouldn't get that information in there. Sometimes they create invalid markup. So a fantastic example of that is when an iframe is inserted with JavaScript, then sometimes this JavaScript is actually running in the head of the page and not in the body. And then if it inserts an iframe where it ran, which is in the head in this case, it would insert an iframe into the head. And that is a problem, because if that happens before, let's say like title and canonical and hreflang and all these kind of things, then the browser has to figure something out, because these things, iframes, can only exist in the body. So what it then does is it closes the head. In this case, it did that after the title, and then inserts the iframe into the body. So we have now moved the canonical, the meta description, the robots, meta tag, all that kind of stuff hreflang, all of that is now in the body where it doesn't belong. It should be in the head. So this can get ignored or can stop working the way that you anticipated, because JavaScript did nothing better than actually just inject something into the head and closing the head prematurely. So that happens quite a few times, actually. The other thing that is tricky is if you're using JavaScript to load crucial content or all the content, and you're not making sure if Googlebot supports it all. So in this case, it does something. What does this code do? Well, it checks if the browser has geolocation available. Pretty much all browsers have these days, not all of them, but most of them have. And then it asks for the current position and then loads the content that is local to that position. So if the browser basically opens my website, this website, what happens is my browser supports geolocation, but what doesn't happen here explicitly in the code, but does happen for me as a user, is I get a pop-up. I get a pop-up that asks, do you want this website to have your location? And if I say yes, then this website will do fine. Because in that case, this website gets my location, Zurich, and then loads the news for Zurich, for instance. Great, I have a great time on this website, great experience. The problem is what happens if I say no. This code only checks if my browser can request my location. It can. I just said no, so it can request the location, but it won't because I said no. In that case, you end up in a situation where this fails because I said no on the pop-up that I got. And I see no content at all because the load global content only happens if my browser cannot even ask me that. That's bad experience for a user. I'm not even caring about Googlebot at this point. As a user, if I say I don't want you to know my location, I see a blank page, that is bad. Now you can imagine Googlebot does not say yes on that pop-up. It says no on all these kind of requests for permissions. So like if you request the camera, if you request push notifications, if you request geolocation, these kind of things, Googlebot says no. So Googlebot didn't see anything on this website either. And you can say like, oh, well, that's bad for Googlebot. Yeah, but it's also really, really bad for your users. So while this is an SEO problem, this is a much, much bigger business problem in this case. And I've seen this done multiple times in the wild. So to summarize, and I didn't run over time. So to summarize, JavaScript is on pretty much every website there is out there in some form and capacity. And it can have an impact on you as an SEO because it does have control over the content that people and bots will see. So you want to make sure that you understand what the JavaScript on your websites do and what these JavaScripts actually do to get content on the page if they do that. There's JavaScript that doesn't. There's like tracking JavaScript and all that kind of stuff that doesn't really have control over the content, but especially like A/B testing, these kind of things have a tremendous amount of control over the content on a website. And it does have an impact on your SEO work, because if Google can't see the content, and it's not because of JavaScript, it's because of bad JavaScript. If JavaScript is done badly, Googlebot might end up not seeing something. If something else is technically preventing Google from executing the JavaScript on your end, like roboting away APIs or roboting away JavaScript files, then again, we cannot run the JavaScript or not the way that the developers anticipated, and then we might not see some or all of your content. Last but not least, use the Google testing tools and the browser developer tools to test if your website is doing fine and if there's something going wrong, and do work together with your developers. And with that, I'd like to say thanks a lot for your time. I guess we might have even time for like one or two questions. I don't know.
Yeah. How much JavaScript should a general SEO know or technical SEO know? Should they go to any courses, and how deep should their knowledge be? Can you recommend anything for them to study more about that?
There's like a bazillion courses, and I'm not the right person to say like it's this one or that one, because people learn differently. I don't think you need to know all the JavaScript. It might help to familiarize yourself with at least the framework that your specific company is using. like React or Next or Angular or Vue or Svelte or whatever, so that at least you know the terms and how it works from a principal perspective. And then just talk to your developers. Like, they need to know the JavaScript, and they need to be, this is important, they need to be able to explain it in plain language to you. If they cannot explain to you what the JavaScript does, then they are not good at what they do. You need to be able to explain it on a pretty basic level so that you can understand what's going on. If they cannot do that, you need to you need to keep asking questions, and maybe they can give you specific pointers for your specific setup.
Okay, maybe you can answer this question. Does Google Extended Board render JavaScript?
I actually don't know, because I haven't talked to the team that uses Google Extended as their user agent. I assume it doesn't, but I don't know. Good question. Thank you very much.
I also notice sometimes many websites that load images with JavaScript, those images don't get indexed. Any particular reason for that, or should they like move loading images to use something else? But when they do that with JavaScript, they have this very good page speed usually, and that's why they're using it in the first place. But very often the images don't get indexed.
There shouldn't be a specific reason why it doesn't get indexed. Like, JavaScript to load images is fine. You might want to look at your sitemap if that is a problem. It sounds like it's a discovery problem rather than anything else. In general, that JavaScript loading for images should not make a problem. There's usually something else at play if that is an issue.
But also, Google said before that they've improved a lot how they discover and how they index the JavaScript rendered content, so to say. What I mean is that can the purely JavaScript websites have good good indexing and have good discovery on the web, or is it still a problem for Google?
Shouldn't be. It's not a problem. And yes, a purely JavaScript image loading solution can absolutely get your images indexed. If it doesn't, then there is usually something else off. And the question is why. So then you would have to check, is the rendered HTML containing the images? If it is, fantastic, then they can and will be indexed. If it's not, then something else is off. Maybe the images have some header that prevents indexing, but generally, if it's in the rendered HTML, it can and will be indexed.
Thank you so much, Martin, for joining us
welcome.
today. It was a very valuable session. We have very good comments in YouTube in chat if you want to check them. And please stay with us. We have Sara next, and after a short commercial pause, we'll come to her.
Use Zofu.com to grow your in-funnel prompt visibility.
What the hell?
We measure your brand visibility for solution discovery prompts.
Oh, really?
We benchmark how your brand's doing across these prompts.
No.
And we show you the resources that ChatGPT uses and cites. We find the most cited page, then we analyze that page's copy, comments, and reviews to find the frequently unanswered questions.
Oh, really?
Then we develop survey questions and a testing approach.
What the hell?
Now you can pitch first-party findings and empower publishers to empower their audience at the bottom of the funnel. Let's collaborate.
Garrett
And now we
French,
have
yeah, Garrett French in this commercial speaking as twice as fast in order to get your attention, actually. And I'm pretty sure he got your attention. Okay, fantastic. We have Sara and we have Cooper. Hi, Cooper. How are you doing today? Well, not much of attention.
You are muted, Sara.
Sara, you're muted. Okay, guys, if you want to donate, fantastic, donate. If we also have an option for regular donation, it's $10 a month. It really helps us because it just we know what money we are getting. If you want to do that, just say something in chat, and I'll send in the chat a link, because it's a different link for a regular donation. Okay, Sara, it's all yours.
I'll just present Sara very briefly. Sara is based in Barcelona and is a very, very famous SEO, I might say, especially in the Spanish-speaking community. Sara wrote a book on SEO, and I cannot unfortunately read it, but as far as I heard, it's it's very good. So if you know Spanish, you should definitely go buy it and read it. Also, what is very cool for myself as well is that Sara is my fellow bee. I'm a blue bee and Sara is yellow bee. So we are two bees today together. And Sara, I'm passing that to you, but I think you are still muted or your microphone might be off. So can you try to say something?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, so no, I was saying, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And I was saying that I swear I didn't do this on purpose. Like Cooper just came to me right before the talk, and yeah, for now he's here, but he's biting me, so I don't know. He'll want to leave very soon. Anyways, so yes, well, let me share my screen first of all. Okay, can you see it?
Yes.
Awesome. So today's topic, if you've seen my talks before, by now you probably know I love speaking about SEO and UX. And today is no exception, but this is the first time that I actually give a talk on this topic. And as you see, we'll be discussing dark patterns. So for those that, Cooper, leave me alone. Sorry about that. For those that are not familiar with this topic, basically dark patterns are like the black hat of user experience. They still have a very big impact in SEO. So let's, without further ado, well, Olesia already introduced me, so you already know who I am, and you already met Cooper. So let's move on to the next slide. As I said, you are probably familiar with Black Hat, and you've probably heard of keyword stuffing and cloaking. But today we're going to see what happens when it comes to user experience and the Black Hat of user experience. So we are going to cover dark patterns, and basically these are assertive design practices. Basically, what they do is to trick the users into taking actions that they wouldn't have wanted to take if it wasn't because of that dark pattern. So basically, it's not something that encourages the user to click on something or like just to some action we do to improve conversion rates. No, it's something that the user actually does not want to do. And it's a manipulative action. However, they are very common, and in fact, 97% of popular sites use them. There was a report in 2022 done by the European Commission that revealed that 97% of the most popular websites and apps used by European consumers employ at least one deceptive practice. And basically, nearly 2 billion people shopping online are victims of this, because basically, like you've seen, like the percentage is almost at 100%. It's crazy. And what's the impact of dark patterns, you may be wondering? Well, there was another research done by Schachinger that found that 47% of consumers would avoid interacting with a brand after experiencing unsubscription difficulties caused by these dark patterns. And what is the most shocking part of it is that as a society, we've even normalized these bad practices. The study, as you can see in this screenshot, it confirmed that there's a lack of consumer awareness regarding the use of these unfair practices. However, once they are identified, the consumers see them as something negative. And what is shocking as well is that consumers themselves struggle to discern the use of these practices. We've normalized them so much that, as the study says, we've even accepted them. It's like part of our normal, experience online. But the problem of using the patterns is that apart from the manipulation, they can also lead to financial harm, the loss of autonomy and privacy, cognitive burdens, mental harm, and also it's a concern for the welfare of each of us. No, so yeah, it's common, unfortunately, and we've normalized it. But today we're going to cover them and discover also if we are using them, because they are so frequent that chances are that by the end of this presentation, you'll be like, oh, actually, this little thing I have implemented on my website, perhaps I should change it. So let's find them. First of all, let's cover them. Let's discover, I'm not covering all of them because it's a very long list, but today in today's presentation, you're going to see some of the most frequent ones. Let's start by fake scarcity. I don't think this is going to surprise anybody. I feel like everyone is pretty familiar with them. So only 3 items left, offer ends in 1 hour, 1 room available, book now. It uses the scarcity principle that basically when you see something is rare and it's about to end, it increases the value of the item. But what happens when the user in a few days' time goes back to the website and sees that these only 3 items left, only like this offer that was supposed to not to last very long is still there? Well, they feel disappointed. And of course, this has an impact on how they perceive your brand and how, if they trust them or not, no? So my recommendation here is that you are transparent and honest about the availability of your items if you really want to build a long-term relationship with your customers, if you want them to keep coming back. We also have confirmed shaming. If anyone uses Duolingo, by now you've probably seen that they are constantly killing the bird. Recently, there was some campaign saying that Duolingo was dead, and I had this app on my phone, and the icon suddenly, like the bird looked sick. Like I thought, oh, I'm not learning Polish enough because I'm trying to study Polish at the moment. I was feeling so bad, no? So here you can see the bird is crying. And it says, like, maybe you cannot see very well because it's in gray. It says, learn Italian today or he will eat a poison loaf of bread. It's like, if you don't learn Italian today, you're going to kill the poor bird, no? Similarly, we also have this, want to have your dog. If you sign up to our newsletter, yes, gladly. And then in another color, no, like not really inviting the user to do it. It says, I don't want to help my dog. It's like, I'm such a bad dog owner, no? So the psychological basis of this is that it manipulates the emotions of the user to create discomfort. And this ultimately damages your brand trust and your credibility as well, no? So it's important that we respect the user's autonomy, that we are honest, and that we don't put them under all this pressure, no? That we are actually making them feel like they are bad people. So yes, the next that pattern that we included here, well, it's sneak into basket and hidden costs. Basically, I'm pretty sure all of these are no surprise for any of you, but sometimes it's like we've normalized them so much that it's like we forgot they even exist. Like we don't even realize that these things happen, no? And how much they can harm us. So here you are auto adding an insurance, a donation, a service, hidden fees, something that the user didn't request, and something that the user is like, you're not making them aware that you are adding this to their shopping cart, no? So it's true that basically takes in advantage of the fact that after you invest time in a process and you've been going through the different steps and you've also been choosing what you want to buy, no? It's less likely that you abandon the purchase. No? It's like, okay, after struggling so much, taking so many steps, I'll just buy it. But it frustrates users and it reduces their trust. So it's important that you disclose any hidden costs or any extra service. Please disclose them beforehand and don't leave it to the end of the journey in this case. Also, very similarly, pre-selection. So these are services that are pre-checked during checkout. Here it's not that they are added automatically, but rather they are pre-checked. So if you don't select something else, they are going to be included anyway, no? And the thing is, the psychological basis of this is that users tend to go with default options. And they assume like, oh, these are necessary. This is like recommended. You buy a phone and it's like, oh, get this service to protect your phone. No, it's like, oh, if I don't get it, what if something happens? What if I get my phone stolen? And it gets like pre-selected. So it's important that you allow users to make informed choices. And these default settings should never be a way to trick them into spending more. Also, force actions is when you force users to complete an unrelated action before allowing them to proceed with their intended task. So this is, for example, when you require a user to download a random app to access a service. I know a festival, I'm not going to say the name, but there's this festival in Barcelona, so maybe you know what I'm talking about, that if you want to access, you have to download an app. So imagine like the lack of accessibility and inclusivity here, no? That you are forced to download an app if you want to attend an event or use the service. So this is exploiting the user commitment, because it's like they've invested time, they've already bought their concert ticket, so they are just gonna do it and that's it, no? But it creates a lot of frustration and it damages their trust. And also it can lead to penalties and legal action if they are deemed deceptive, no? So it's important that you always give control to your users and you eliminate unnecessary barriers that, you know, that your service could have, and also that you take into account accessibility as well. Also, roach motel, which is also known as subscription traps. It's when it's very easy to sign up, maybe with a trial version or not necessarily, but it's really difficult to cancel the subscription. You are looking for the unsubscribe option everywhere and you cannot find it. Or there's a complex cancellation form, or you have to call someone. It relies on the user frustration and the effort fatigue. And many people, it's like when they see it's going to be such a hassle, they have to call a number, sometimes a foreign number, they just don't bother. And, or they may forget, they may say, oh, I'll do it later. And then they see, they go to their bank account and they see they got charged. So it's important that cancellation is as easy as signing up, and all these honest practices ultimately are going to build trust and customer loyalty. Interface interference is when you manipulate the user interface and you highlight an option. This is similar to what we saw actually with the Duolingo one. That Duolingo example was using two dark patterns in that case. You can see the yes very clearly, and the no, you struggle more. The letters is like, I don't really want you to see this, no? They're hiding it or just making it complicated. And users are more likely to choose the most visual prominent option, even if it's not in their best interest, but it's the first one they see and the one they struggle, no? And this can lead to frustration and really poor user experience. And so please don't do it. Like, don't do any of this if possible, because design should guide the user. It should never manipulate them, and you should always be transparent and clear. Disguised ads. These ones look like genuine content, like an actual article, a post, a download button, and these are just ads that lead to unrelated sites. And when users see native-looking content, they trust it, and sometimes, since it's very similar to actual content that looks like normally when you click it would respond like this, they don't realize they're interacting with an ad. In this example, for example, you can see two download buttons, no? So how do you know? It says click download. Which one? Which one is the ad and which one is the real button? And it damages user trust and credibility. So always, whenever you have an ad, you should clearly label it and make sure that users understand that it's an ad. Comparison prevention. Here, it's very difficult for the user to understand, like they see different options, they all look the same. It's not like at a glance, it's not very easy to understand the difference between one subscription or the other, or product. And it just leads to poor purchasing decisions and frustration, because users may not be choosing the option that suits them best, no? And ultimately, it also damages your brand. So you should be transparent and empower your users, and always provide clear and information that is clear and that can be easily compared. Trick wording. Here, in this example, actually, we have two problems. You have yes in red and no blue. Like, the use of colors is a bit strange, but also the way it's written. Do you oppose on allowing us to share your personal information with third parties? It plays with, you know, double negatives and confusing wording, that whether you're a native speaker or not, but actually if you're reading a message in a language that is not your own, you're going to be like feeling super confused and you will not know what to click, no? So users misinterpret the wording, they make a choice they didn't intend to do, and it also makes them very frustrated. So please be clear and use direct, transparent language. follow good UX writing practices, and always also use colors in a better way. Try to avoid these confusing messages. Also here, fake social proof. So influencers that give fake reviews, testimonials. I know in SEO, sometimes reviews are not true, and we've seen this, but sometimes it's like so evident that people just don't trust your brand. And if you're an influencer and you do these kind of things, you're going to lose a lot of credibility. So always be honest, and if you share something, even if it's a paid collaboration, try to sell the value of that item. Don't say that something is great or eco-friendly when it's not even eco-friendly. And make sure also that the kind of content and products that you advertise, that it kind of makes sense that your brand advertises that it doesn't surprise anybody. You're talking about something that's not out of random. Bait and switch. So this is when, again, this, I feel all of us must have been a victim of, probably all of them at some point of our lives. So when there's like an offer, like flights, for example, and you click and you see the price of the flight is actually much higher than it seemed. And users commit to an action based on the expectation. No? So even if they see the price is higher, they may still continue, but it causes them a lot of frustration, and also you lose trust, and your brand is not perceived in a very positive way. So what can we do? You should deliver what you promise, and the buttons and the offer should always lead to the expected action. Last one, privacy suckering. It's when you trick users into sharing more personal data. It's called privacy suckering, by the way, because it comes from Mark Zuckerberg, because you can find examples like sign up with Facebook and it automatically grants data access. And hidden terms can allow companies to sell their user data to third parties. So it's not very respectful with the user's privacy, but users choose the convenience over privacy. So they just prefer to sign up with Facebook, even if it means that they are sharing their data, rather than doing it with a different way. No? So what should we do in this case? We should respect user privacy, and especially we should disclose what kind of data are we collecting and how is it going to use, and always give user full control over their information, and that they can also revoke access to that data. So yes, when you use dark patterns, you're winning the clicks, you're getting all the attention, but you lose the trust. So you're getting all these people interacting with your product and getting them to do what you want, but at what cost? We're going to see the ethics in design and SEO and why they matter, and what Google says. In this case, they explicitly caution against these bad practices in their official guidelines. So they've previously said that you should make pages for users and not search engines, and that you should not mislead them, and that you should avoid deceptive functionality. And when you have a website that tricks a user into thinking that they can access content or services when they actually can't, you're actually violating Google's spam policies. And they are not just a UX problem, because they can also get you penalized. So as SEOs, we should absolutely care about these bad practices. They can, if you are using dark patterns, you could face search ranking penalties, Chrome warnings, unsafe browsing, and lower user trust and engagement. Here are some key Google updates that already warned us about dark patterns. So we start from 2012 to 2018 with when Google Chrome began blocking ads. And yeah, so over the years, Google have been implementing different updates to fight them. And this is something that it is expected to continue as we see that Google and other search engines care about user experience more and more. And in marketing and design, ethics play a fundamental role. So if we want our brand and our products to be seen as trustworthy and to foster loyalty between our users, not just get them to make one single purchase, but get them to want to come back and continue to engage with our brands, we shall avoid these bad practices. But it's true that sometimes business goals get in the middle, and our clients or managers may say, hey, but how do we increase sales? How do we increase, whatever goal you have in place? So what guiding principles should we have in place to ensure that we are encouraging our users to buy our product or service, but we are still providing an ethical experience? Here are some principles for you. First of all, you should be transparent and upfront about terms, conditions, costs. Communicate very clearly any fees, any hidden charges, so that you empower the user to make an informed decision. Be authentic, publish real reviews, collaborate with influencers and brands that may actually love your product. Use honest product descriptions, truthful pricing, and ensure that your customers can trust your information without any kind of exaggeration or misleading claims. Also, be accessible. So create websites for all users, including those with disabilities, which can be permanent, temporary, and situational, and help them navigate your site. And follow good accessibility guidelines, make the content clear and easy to understand for all users, and also respect their privacy. So it's important that you get explicit consent before collecting user data, and that you are transparent about data usage and give them control over their personal information. Also, because if you don't do all of this, you could also face legal penalties in certain countries. So it's also a matter of being compliant. So avoid tactics like the dark patterns we just saw. Provide an honest user experience, don't trick the user psychologically, and also try to find a good balance between business goals with ethics, because the growth of your brand or your service, it shouldn't come at the expense of your user trust. And also you want users to keep coming back and to build a loyalty between users and brand. So you need to ensure that the objectives align with ethical practices and prioritize the user's best interest, and also stay updated with UX best practices and take into account user feedback. In this case, you should also take into account not just quantitative data, but also qualitative data. You should speak to other teams that are in touch with the user if you're not, sales team, customer success, UX researchers, and have integrity in decision-making and have the courage to push back against unethical practices. I know sometimes it's hard, but we should always try to have an advocate for a strong work ethic where we put users at the forefront, even if sometimes it means that we have to say no, because saying no to deceptive tactics is saying yes to long-term trust and success. And SEO and UX should always work hand in hand, and your ethical choices don't only avoid penalties, but also create long-term business value. And by the way, we are nearly done, by the way, but this last part of the presentation, I would like to, it's not just about me today, it's also about Cooper and so many animals out there. So you had a chance to briefly meet my cat, and I know we saw some AI Siamese cats that are not as beautiful as the real one. So Cooper's story started in a very similar way as many other cats and dogs. So I met him in a shelter back in 2019. He was already around 1 year old. And well, his story had a happy ending. He's my best friend and we have so much fun and great times together. However, it's not always the case, as we know, and this is why we are here today. And today, everyone watching us, everyone that will have access to this talk and to SEOcharity, you can make a difference helping Ukrainian animal shelters. Every little bit helps, whether it's sharing, a donation, whatever you feel comfortable with, or even adopting, because no act of kindness is too small. And every rescued pet, trust me, they are going to change a life. Like, it's not going to, you're not just going to change their life, but your life as well. And I can tell you that since I have Cooper in my life, like, it's just much better. So yes, today they need us, but we need you as well. So thank you so much to everyone who is watching us. and for all your help for this great cause. And if you have any questions or you want to have access to my slides, you will find them in this link here. Here are my socials. And yes, thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much, Sara. It was amazing. Where did you learn about UX to apply it in SEO? Because it's kind of a very extensive field, and you never know when you are in SEO, you don't know where to start. Do you have any recommendations for that?
So yeah, that's actually a good question. Well, in my case, I studied a master's in UX UI design quite a few years ago, and there are great resources out there. If you speak Spanish, I recently wrote a book about SXO where I cover best SEO and UX practices and the intersection of both. But you will start seeing more and more resources about SXO, not just UX itself. I'm also happy to continue to share knowledge, and I'll continue to do so because I think it's a very important topic, and also search engines will continue to prioritize user experience. So yeah, it's a topic that you'll see more and more information coming. I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, and I think more engagement with this topic started a year and a half ago with HCU, when many websites got hit, and many people started saying that that's because of like black UX patterns or just bad UX patterns that they were using. In your experience, how often is bad UX impacting negatively the websites? When is it really the case? Because some websites have bad UX, but they are still ranking quite well, and it doesn't seem to harm them, like, unless...
Yeah, sometimes, of course, I've seen this a lot with big brands that sometimes it's like, okay, you're ranking because you are this brand and you are like when I think of this product, you are like the first brand that comes to my mind. So as we know, sometimes when it comes to a big brand, it looks like they can get away with it. With smaller brands, it works a bit differently. So you have to, I think it's important to analyze case by case, and always, if you're not a big brand, try to follow best practices, and always try to just try to innovate in general and provide good content, and make sure that you also provide like clear demonstrations of how your product or services work. And I'm always, when it comes to content, I love recommending using success stories and use cases, like specific examples of clients that were satisfied with your product. Any content that it doesn't have any search volume, and I can't believe we are in 2025 and we only care about content that has search volume. But anyway, that's we could have a coffee and discuss for hours about these topics. So yeah, I would say just be original and always try to provide the best experience for your users, and be transparent with the benefits of your products and your services.
And by the way, Sara sometimes makes meetups in Barcelona about SEO, so you should follow her and see when she has some, and definitely go. It's worth it, and it's amazing. Thank you, Sara, so much for joining us today. Please stay with us, because we have Roxana next, and with a very interesting embeddings topic. Please stay with us. And I'm happy to see Roxana is in the studio already with us. Hello, Roxana. How are you?
Hello. Hi, everybody. I'm great. How's everybody doing?
Yeah,
we are doing not bad. The nation is coming, and we have already two fantastic sessions. I just want to say, guys, don't hesitate. If you only can donate $5, $5 is fantastic. It will provide a cat for basically almost a week. Or if you want to be a regular donation, it's just $10 a month, and I also will send you t-shirt like that. Yes, okay, it's all yours, guys.
Thank you, Anton. And I've met Roxana when in the miserable times of COVID, when Martin Splitt was talking to us about indexing and all stuff during some conference of Google. I don't remember which one. He organized one for SEOs, and I was super lucky to be there and to meet Roxana. There were only, I think, 5 to 10 people there or something like that, so we could ask him any questions we like. And whenever you see something like that, just join that. It's a very good opportunity. Roxana also told me about the Women in SEO, Tech Women in SEO group, and I've met amazing people there as well. So Roxana is a great advocate for everything technical in SEO and SEO itself, in different groups supporting all kinds of people there. She is also head of SEOcharity March, and like her knowledge is so extensive, and she knows so much, not only about images but also about all these kind of very, very technical subtleties of SEO. I'm giving my word to Roxana. Roxana, you can start if you wish.
Thank you very much, Alessia. We also have the passion for image search between us, which doesn't happen a lot. I only know a handful of people who care about it, and you're one of the people that does a lot of testing around it and knows a lot of stuff. So I am the lucky one to know you, actually. But today I'm here to talk about embeddings. And I know this is a topic that some of us just kind of woke up to, and we were like, what now? What's this new thing? Don't we have enough to deal with in SEO? All these changes all the time. And I know it's always hard when we get new concepts, and all these great people we follow, they start talking about embeddings as if it's so natural and everybody knows about it. And I'm one of those people now, but I wasn't always one of them. I used to read articles and think, I'm too busy to understand what this is. It's just too much. What do I do? But then I realized they're quite important. And this is why I'm here today. If you're still in that place where you're wondering, why do I need to know about this? Is it going to go away anyway? So, maybe it's not worth it. You have to listen to this, and then you'll judge for yourself if this is ever going away. So every time I deal with complicated things that I'm trying to understand, my way of dealing with that is to go back to when those things were not that complicated. So I tend to go back in time to see how things have started when they were quite simple, and then follow that timeline to see how did that complexity build up. And I did the same with embeddings for myself to understand it, and I think it's a process that will help you as well. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. I'm going to help you have a look in the past in order to understand the present. So we all know Google's great. Some of us that have been in the industry for many, many years, and I see a lot of you here on the chat, you know how Google used to look, where you would search for something, and if it wasn't an exact match, you wouldn't get a website. Well, nowadays, some of the results you get don't even match what you're searching for anymore, but they really match your intent. So we know Google has evolved a lot. But how did we shift from keyword matching to what we call embeddings nowadays? And it's a bit of a journey. So, sit down if you're standing. I'm going to go back to 2012. I'm not going to go before that just because, but something called term frequency, inverse document frequency. Some of you remember it. We don't need to complicate it too much. Let's say if your page had mentions of cat, you had an article about cats, Google would most likely compare your page to all the other documents it has indexed and then see how many of them also have the word cat. And that's because it could judge through term frequency if your content is really relevant for that, but through inverse document frequency, how many other pages online might be discussing the same topic, because that would tell Google if your article is somewhat unique or if it's very, very common, for example. They would apply some mathematical formula, skip, make it simple, and then you'd get a calculation. So if we were to consider that our article had a thousand keywords or 1,000 words, sorry, and cat was repeated 16 times, would get that score. And let's say there were 6 more pages in the index, which is ridiculous. Google has way more. And all 6 mentioned cats, then your score would be 0, which means you're not special. You probably won't rank for cats. I'm sorry, it's just not. But this is more used to determine stop words, right? Things that appear on every website, like the home button. Everybody has one. Not necessarily cat as a keyword. So if we were to do the math again and pretend this time only one document out of all the ones indexed had the word cats, your score actually would be quite good and your chances of ranking for this would be quite high. And that was just simple math that was done, matching on the words or keywords on your pages and in other documents to determine who's relevant for what. It was simple back then. And even the SEO recommendations, they were so simple. The recipe for a perfectly optimized page was just to use the same keyword over and over again. So that frequency. So in the calculation, you would get quite a high number. In 2012, though, we had the knowledge graph. And this is where Google kind of said, okay, we're tired of strings, exact match. We're going to understand things. So this is kind of where they wanted to go towards concepts. And in their official announcement, they said, knowledge graph is just the first baby step towards a Star Trek-like search. And boy, did they actually do that. Because in 2013, they released something called Word2Vec. And this little invention from Google is actually the basis of a lot of search engines, public like Bing and others, but also the e-commerce ones that you find on some websites. And you don't have to read the whole technical thing. I only pulled out 2 architectures that they mention, and I'm going to explain why, because I think they bring in the context that we need. So there's a thing called bag of words, which is the model used to analyze sentences. And unfortunately, it's exactly that. You take every word of a sentence, you put it in a bag, and then as you get words out, every time you get a word, you count it. There's no further understanding outside of that. And then Google would put this in a vector, which you see in the right corner, lower right. And it would just literally count all the words, but it would be a way to store information about this text in a numerical format. So you can see here, out of those 3 sentences, 2 of them actually appear to have the same numerical vector in the end because they contain the same words. But we as humans know there's a difference in those sentences because the child makes the dog happy and the dog makes the child happy are 2 different things. But unfortunately, search engines were not that smart. They didn't quite get nuance yet. Here's where skipgram improves things a bit. Imagine you take every 2 words of a sentence, you group them together. And if you do something like this, all of a sudden you get a bit of context. So in this example, you know the fox is quick, it's brown, it can jump, and it can jump over things. So all of a sudden, you don't just know there's a fox, you know some properties around that fox. And it was about this time that SEO recommendations improved a bit. And we were told that it's fine to use close variants because Google will connect the dots when it comes to this. So we don't have to just keep spamming the same keyword. We can actually find related keywords and variants of keywords. In 2013, we got Hummingbird, and this was dubbed the semantic core update. So already we're using words that are around meaning. Yeah, semantic is understanding the sentences. And in this example, you can see somebody searching for best running sneakers for bad knees, for example. Google would identify kind of the main elements of the query, and then it would be able to run it through a synonym engine. So think of this as the most massive list of synonyms you've ever seen. And then it would identify that running sneakers and running shoes are the same thing. Bad knees or joint pain could be the same thing. And then it would create these alternative searches for the same for your initial search. So actually the results you got were not just for one search. It could be for multiple synonymous search terms. And then the results would not necessarily match your exact phrase anymore. And all of a sudden, it looked so much more intelligent. In 2015, we had RankBrain, and this is, I think, the first time we can say Google's actually using AI. In fact, it's just using machine learning, which is not actually AI per se, but still quite impressive in terms of what they could achieve at this point in time. Searching for things like what's the best laptop for video editing under 800 pounds. By using machine learning, they could relate certain phrases to concepts. So for instance, video editing is the concept of content creation in general, and phrases like under 800 pounds is the concept of cheap or being on a budget. So then you could use past searches that are synonymous to this, like best budget laptop for creators, where Google knows that the results were good, users liked it, and then give it those results as well. In order to do this, though, we have to talk about vector spaces and similarity. And you've probably seen some of what's to follow. But to simplify it as much as I can, imagine those numerical vectors from the beginning, a bit more complicated than just what you saw there. But every phrase, every keyword has a numerical representation in a space. So you imagine it has a postcode that places it somewhere, right? An address. And if you look at these three phrases, they're quite synonymous. And then you can see that their postcodes or their vector representations are mathematically quite close, which means they live in the same neighborhood, pretty much. But then the distance between them is not calculated just by subtraction or addition. It is calculated using trigonometry. And I know you didn't pay attention to that in school either, because you thought, when will I ever need that? Well, the joke's on me, apparently, because now we're talking about cosine similarity. So you're calculating the cosine of angles between different concepts in this mathematical space. But we don't need to complicate it. If the angle is small, the concepts are similar. If the angle is very big, the concepts are most likely opposite. And this is where in our SEO journey, we started seeing things like this from Backlinko, where he's saying, well, RankBrain can turn concepts into, keywords into concepts. And then you would see a set of results for that concept. And based on what you click, the next user might see the same set of results. But if you didn't like it, the next user might actually see some different data. So Google's now training its system to understand what is a good result using user data. And it's also this time where we started talking about decreasing bounce rate and increasing dwell time, because we heard user data matters, but we probably got it a bit wrong, because it's not necessarily about these two metrics specifically, yeah? Then in 2018, we got neural matching. So already now we're talking more advanced machine learning, and not just that, we're actually getting closer to what we can call AI. This was dubbed the super synonyms update. So not only that Google had a whole library of synonyms, it had these super synonyms. And I will give you an example. When people search for, why does my TV look strange? Because it got like a weird vibe in the colors. Instead of Google sending you to articles on how to fix your TV, you actually got something called the soap opera effect. So Google is now able to connect your problem to concepts that you might not even know they're related. These are super synonyms in its library. In 2019, we got BERT. I'm not going to go into what BERT is because it's too complicated, but one of the main things that you need to understand with BERT if before a word or a phrase or a concept would get one postcode, one representation in the vector space, with BERT, the same concept would have a more complex representation based on context. So now Google could identify from its neighbors if we're talking about bank as a financial institution or bank as a bank building or a long ridge. So all of a sudden, Google would not just match on the keyword, but also it could understand the context. And then in 2021, we got mom. And this is where Google was able to send in that vector space, not just text, but also image information or video information. So imagine at this point, you can take any type of different media and make it equal in this vector space. So when I search for bank, I can find it in text, in images, in video, in anything, because it's all in this one space. And more than that, you might have the English word for cat, you might have the Spanish word, the gato, you might have the French one, le chat, all in the same space, and they would be really close together in this vector space, and Google would know that each one of them means the same thing, but in different languages. And then in 2023, we got Gemini. So just to quickly recap, RankBrain was about concept matching. We got neural matching, synonyms, related terms. With BERT, we got better sentence structure understanding. And then MOM brought this multimodal layer, different types of media you can search for, and in different languages. And then Gemini just put a generative AI layer on top of all that information. So it's able to use that information and bring it back to you as a summary. It can also understand entire conversations. So this is the point where just using keywords is not needed anymore. You can have full sentences and even more. And then it can process all these different types of media because now they exist in that vector space. And then in 2024, we got AI overviews. Yay! Great for us. I know everybody's happy with them, especially since we can't really measure how many people interact with them. Hopefully that's coming soon. So the question on everybody's mind now is, how do you optimize for AI overviews? And I know there's a lot of theories and a lot of people that talk about this, but I would say if you paid attention, all you have to do is make sure your information is in that vector space in the clearest way possible, so then that generative AI layer can bring it out. And of course, you have to do what you always do in SEO. Make sure your content is discoverable, it can be indexed, it can be ranked, and so on. And that brings us to this, modern day, and what is the impact on SEO now? So we saw how SEO kind of changed in time a little bit, but what do we need to look at now? And hey, we're still in the middle of a core update. I didn't know if this was going to finish by today or not, but hey, it's still there. And with core updates, we keep getting the same instructions to look at our content and use these questions to analyze the quality of our content and see if it's good. And you can see, as Search Engine Journal pointed out, this is the advice we got since 2011. And it makes sense because if our content lives in that vector space, nothing has really changed in a lot of these past years. Google still uses that embedding technology to understand content and relationships and concepts. So then when it says, ask yourself these questions, we find them to be quite subjective to answer. But not Google, because now that we know what technologies they use, we can trace it back to any of their systems to understand how they can objectively identify quality content. And I put here a hypothesis stamp on my slides because I haven't actually gone through all the patents to verify if this is the exact system, but you will see why it makes perfect sense. So does your content provide original information? How does Google know that? Simple. It can embed the content on your page and then compare it to the embeddings of everything else on the web. And then it can see if that similarity score is very high, you've copied somebody else. But please remember, with embeddings, it's not about using the same words. It's about kind of saying the same information, even if you're saying it with different words. And Google can identify that other sites have done it before you. Does your content provide a substantial, complete, or comprehensive description? So just imagine if BERT can understand context and depth of context, Mom can then search if your content compared to every single piece of content in the entire world. We're not limited to the same language anymore. And we could even bring in passage ranking here, why not? Right? To find key sections that assess your topic coverage beyond the surface. So Google definitely has the technology to identify if your content provides a comprehensive description of the topic. And the last one I'll do, does the content provide insightful analysis or interesting information beyond the obvious? And again, Google could be using RankBrain to detect unique perspectives across content. So imagine if you do your own analysis of things, or you put it through your own lens, and it could be a different view than other people have explained before. It could be using neural matching to find related but unexpected concepts. Remember the soap opera effect. And then it could be using entity recognition to spot new data, new sources, or any type of original claims. So clearly, Google can easily answer this question too. It can answer all of them. So if you have the time, actually go down through patents and you might find exactly what systems Google uses. But as you can see, they definitely have the technology to answer these questions objectively. Other things in SEO where embeddings will probably help you get more context, EEAT. So things like expertise, experience, authority, and trustworthiness, they can all be checked using data from the embeddings that Google already has. Now, a very important point is Google's algorithm is not just embeddings. It's just a way for Google to get that data. But if we make an abstraction of all other ranking signals, which we know they're in the hundreds, if not more, you can consider expertise as Google being able to kind of check your embeddings against other niche websites embeddings. So let's say you write an article in the medical field, Google can then compare it to the embeddings of the NHS website, which it knows it's a trustworthy medical website, and then kind of say, well, your recommendations don't really align. Your cosine similarity is so far away. We don't think you're giving good advice on this topic. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can kind of see how Google is able to do all of these checks as well. Redirects. If you remember the leak, the Google documentation leak that we had last year, and I know Mark Williams will talk about it in detail later on. There was one thing in there that was very interesting, and it said that Google will keep up to 20 versions of a redirected page or of a page. Yeah. So any changes you do to a page, Google will have historically 20 versions of it. And that's very interesting because we're also told never redirect to a page that's not relevant. But how would Google know? Well, embeddings. Again, if it has the embedding of every single version of your page, it can easily compare where your page left to where your page was redirected to and check the embeddings on that content and see, is it highly similar? And if it's not, you probably redirected your page to the home page, which is not necessarily relevant. Stop doing that. But this is how you would know. Even when it comes to backlinks and anchor text, it's easy to imagine how embeddings again could be used here. Your anchor text, Google says, don't go keyword specific, don't go to generic. If it can embed it and then compare it to the text of your whole page and the embedding of that, it can calculate the cosine similarity to understand if your anchor text is actually relevant to the page you're linking to. It can embed the page you're putting your link on to see if that content is relevant to the page you're linking to. Again, just easy, well, I say easy math, but it's, computer easy math, not for humans. It can just calculate that distance and see, is this page that you're putting a link on relevant for the page you're sending users to? And then even whole backlink profiles. Yeah. Imagine it can embed the information of your entire backlink profile and then compare it to a spammy backlink profile to determine if you are spammy as well. Because if those embeddings have a very close similarity and you resemble a very spammy profile, you're probably spammy as well. Right. Biggest question on everybody's minds is, okay, maybe you sold me a little bit on embeddings, but how do I get started? I'm not technical. I don't have time. How do I do it? Well, first of all, you need to embed text to understand how you can play with embeddings, and you can do that with any of these models. Sometimes you might find out that your company already uses one of these, so you can kind of piggyback on their account. One thing to understand about embeddings, as I said before, it is not the text how you would compare it. With embeddings, it's a bit different. So to give you an example, I searched for this definition and I got the first two websites that I could find that appeared to be human written, and I put those definitions in a script that I'll share with you to compare their cosine similarity. And these two definitions are 0.8888 whatever similar on a scale from 0 to 1, so highly similar. I asked the same question in LLMs, and I got the AI overview definition, and then I got the Perplexity AI definition. So this is text written by that generative AI layer that uses the embeddings to create the information. And the similarity score is 0.95. So please remember, the only way to understand embeddings is to work with them. You can get my script where I do this kind of stuff. You can compare two strings, string to body of text, or you can even compare a string against every section on a page. That doesn't always work. And this is the short URL for it. It's a collab script, so you don't need to code anything. But to be fair, I inspired all my work around this from this guy pretty much, because he was one of the first to be very vocal about embeddings. So check out his webinar on how he's using AI tools for SEO, because he talks about embeddings quite a bit. Also check out this article. Even though it was inspired by other people, I think Everett did a great job to put step-by-step instructions that anybody can follow. You don't have to be technical. And then also you can find out, you can have a look at Leaffoot's script on how he's clustering thousands of keywords easily with embeddings, because I think a lot of us work with content, right? But most of all, stay informed. Get yourself surrounded by all this type of information. Alida has a specialized newsletter. It's called AI and Marketing News, and you get a lot of scripts and ideas shared there every single week. Chima has started a webinar series, The Practical Marketer, on Moz, where she invites a lot of the great SEOs we admire to talk about how they use AI in their day-to-day work. And then read specialty articles. And Gianluca Fiorelli just came out with a great guide on semantics. Please read it. It is one of the best things I've seen lately on the internet. But most of all, do not sleep on this. Play and experiment, try to understand it, see how it can help you improve your day-to-day, how it can help you understand your content better and find more relevancy in the things you do every day. Because this is here to stay, it will not go away. And if you learned one thing today that you're grateful for, please consider a donation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roxana. It's been amazing. And unfortunately, we don't have any time left for the questions. Just let people briefly know where they can find you if they want to connect and if you are open to that. And we'll pass on to the next speaker from No Other Learner.
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. Find me by my name. I'm going to wait for you there. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please stay with us. We have Noah Learner next from Stumbling Sky and SEO community, so you won't want to miss that as well.
Use Zofu.com to grow your in-funnel prompt visibility.
What the hell?
We measure your brand visibility for solution discovery prompts.
Oh, really?
We benchmark how your brand's doing across these prompts.
No.
And we show you the resources that ChatGPT uses and cites. We find the most cited page, then we analyze that page's copy, comments, and reviews to find the frequently unanswered questions.
Oh,
Then we
really?
develop survey questions and a testing approach.
What the hell?
Now you can pitch first-party findings and empower publishers to empower their audience at the bottom of the funnel. Let's collaborate.
Hello, Noah. How are you?
Hey y'all.
Nice
Can
to
you hear
see
me?
you. You've got a very cool cat. Cool cat.
This is Sterling Sky. I'm repping the brand. Isn't this great? How are we all doing?
Try maybe refocusing your camera because you're a bit blurred.
Yeah, slightly pixelated. But okay, maybe your camera will get better. I just want to congratulate Noah on
It
the
looks
SEO.
clean on my side.
Yeah, because it doesn't go through the network. You just have it like a mirror. Okay, Noah, I want to congratulate you on the the SEO community on Slack. Guys, if you're not there, you should be. Everyone is there already. So just approach Noah and he will invite you there. And thank you, Noah, for doing it for us. And guys, if you can donate, please do donate. Amount does matter, but if you can donate anything, we are very happy to accept all money. Absolutely, 100% of this money will go to cats and dogs shelters. We don't have salaries here. We actually spend our own money here. Okay, I'm done. It's all yours, guys.
Anton just stole half of my presentation speech for Noah. But anyway, I will add that Noah is the director of innovation and has been doing that since 2001. So he knows so much stuff. And one of the best possible ways I found to track him and what he does and what he has to offer is a live events section in SEO community. You will meet amazing people there. And it's one of the most positive communities where you can be not afraid to have these toxic comments or whatever else. So everyone is there to learn and to engage. And I think that it's an incredible way to get to learn to know other people in SEO in an ecological and ethical way and to participate in that. So Noah, I'm passing the word to you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's so kind of you. It's really great to be here. I'm not really excited to go after Roxana, but I'll do my best. This is a very different talk. This is a talk that we're going to call Down the Mountain. And Down the Mountain is a talk that I gave for the first time. Just switching over to this, get to hit play. Okay, sweet. Everybody can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Making sure. Okay, sweet. So we're doing Down the Mountain. This talk really begins for me back in 2003 when I worked at a place doing real estate in Cambridge, Massachusetts. At that time in my life, I was feeling a little bit aimless. And one day at work, I sat down with a pen and paper and drew out what I wanted out of life. And it was a really simple dream. It was having a life partner, if we were really lucky, having some kids, and maybe some pets, maybe a cat and a dog, all inside a home that we owned. And so really what we're talking about today are two really critical questions. What do you want out of your career? And what would you sacrifice to get it? How much time are you willing to invest in yourself, both inside and outside of work, in order to accomplish your dreams? And this framework that I'm going to share with you today is called Down the Mountain. If you've ever gone skiing and you're standing at the top of a run, there are all these different ways to get from point A, which is the top, down to the ski lift. You could go to the left, you could go to the right, and along the way, you could make more and more choices to find your way. And I think it's that level of strategy, i.e., it's not terribly strategic, that we need in order to make our way through our career, because I feel like so much of it unfolds as we go. And what I mean by this, it's really great to start with this skills matrix that Tom Critchlow has produced that shows us the different types of skills that we need at different stages in our career. And one thing that we really learn quickly is we need to learn all kinds of hard technical skills early in our career. And as we move along throughout our career, we need to learn all the types of soft skills, communication skills, motivation skills, the types of skills that we can use in a room with stakeholders to get them to allocate budget and to move forward with the projects that we think are going to drive revenue, both for our team and for theirs. And these skills, as we move along through our career, have different impacts on our salary too. And so for a lot of us, when we think about our career, we think about what do we need to do in order to make the most money possible. And so early, we need to learn a lot of technical stuff. Later on, we need to learn how to communicate. It's really, really important. And the reason why all this is important is that when we surveyed folks and we asked them, what are the key things that really hit you in the face when you're trying to do your job? We wanted to know if it's technical, if it's the amount of time you have, if it's budget. But the biggest problem that people face are other people. So these kinds of soft skills are really critically important. And I want to introduce a concept that was first created by a guy named Jason Roberts back in 2010. It's this concept of the surface area of luck. And what this means is that the better we are at doing things and the better we are at telling people about the things that we do, the better outcomes we'll be able to have for ourselves. This framework really has 4 different parts. It's going wide, going deep, going really big, and giving back as much as you can. And we'll spend some time on each of these different processes. Really, early on in our careers, we want to go as wide as possible. And for me, I always felt like the best place and the best way to do that is to work in the best agency you can. I was talking with my pal Robin Lord on Tuesday. He's been doing all kinds of stuff on his own career, and I just felt like he was the perfect person to talk with before giving this chat today. And I asked him what were the key things that you did in your career? And he felt like his move to working at Distilled back in 2015 or 16, I believe, and surrounding himself with just a crazy amount of crazy passionate people who are all really dedicated to bettering themselves was the key thing that really accelerated his career. And a piece of that is exposure. Exposure is being exposed to as many different ways of working as you can. And it's also exposing yourself to as many new ideas as possible. And part of that, and one of the hardest things, is embracing making mistakes. And it's this process of making mistakes while we learn, and the ability to keep pushing through even though we're making those mistakes, which is what's going to enable us to not only learn new concepts, but to have those new concepts stick for the long haul. We also, when we're learning early in our careers, we want to embrace something called cognitive disfluency. And if you haven't heard of or read this book, I think it's really amazing. Basically, cognitive disfluency is making something harder to learn on purpose. One of the ways that we can do that are things like reading stuff in weird fonts, making it slightly blurry to read something. It can also be things like handwriting notes about topics that we're learning rather than just listening or just watching or typing notes. All of those things are not as important or compelling when we learn as if we're actually taking notes. We want to dig as many ditches as possible early in our career also. And what does this actually mean? The hardest thing I've ever had to do physically or even on any kind of job was digging a ditch under a house. One time I had to dig a ditch that was 30 feet long, 2 feet wide, 2 feet deep. And about 30 feet in, I had to turn to the right another 10 feet and carry that ditch to the right. And I had to pull all of that dirt out bucket by bucket for a period of 3 weeks throughout the winter of 1998. It was brutal. And the thing that was amazing about that was it taught me that I could accomplish anything. That if I could do that, I could do anything else. And so we need to have those ditches as part of our work early. We also have to be incredibly curious. That's like the core thing about what we do. And if we are not curious, we're never going to have that drive to succeed and excel that's really critically important for making our way in our career. Talked about exposure before. You want to do everything, whether it's pro bono work, whether it's your ability to build a passion website for something you're really into, whether it's you helping your friends and your family. You just really have to try and take on work that's just outside of your comfort zone. And the reason why is that you're creating that cognitive disfluency that makes something harder for you to do. And because you struggle with it, it's something that you're going to always remember, thereby accelerating your learning. You also want to develop critical thinking skills. And you might be thinking, hey, I'm really smart. But guess what? We all have stuff to learn about this. It took me 20 years into my career to even hear of a concept called using a decision-making process. And it's really easy. One way to get started with this is a really simple book that a guy named Ken Watanabe wrote. It's called Problem Solving 101, and he wrote it in order to teach Japanese school children how to think critically about problems. And he would identify 4 stages. When I think about it, though, I think about a modified approach that we developed at 2 Octobers, and we called it the 2 Octobers way. It's really simple. The first step is really the most important. You want to define the problem, and that's based on a concept called first principles thinking. You can learn a lot about first principles thinking at this blog post on fs.blog. And that's when you define a problem or strip it down to its barest essential parts, and then you reason a solution up from that. You then have to be able to understand which data you need to gather and explore. And this concept of exploring the data is something that separates so many people when they actually need to solve problems. A lot of us jump into SEO tools thinking that they're just going to tell us how to do and what to do, but we often have to be able to get dirty with the data and really get in it and explore it in order for us to have insights that others aren't willing to spend the time to glean. We then need to be able to extract the insights, and a lot of times that can be as simple as taking notes in a Google Doc about the information that we're reading. And then we can form a hypothesis, and that's when you say, I think if we do X, then Y will happen, at which point we're led to create and execute tests, and then we track and continuously improve. And that's really the core of the 2 Octobers way. And I think that it's driven so much of what I've personally been able to do. You also need to think about and learn about bias and learn how to remove it from the way that you think. And you also, one of the coolest things from this book too is this concept of cognitive tunneling, which we really want to avoid. Basically, cognitive tunneling is something where we only focus on something with our blinders on. We don't have a wide enough vision of all of the different pieces and parts that could be making a situation difficult or complex. And so it's a question to ask oneself when you're trying to solve or think through a problem is, am I tunneling? Or do I have a wide enough perspective on what's potentially happening? Early in our career, a lot of us feel like we're spinning our wheels when we work. Learning to prioritize is critically important. I've gone to a lot of conferences, and this topic comes up over and over again. We all think about it, but we all, as speakers, focus on it because we experience both for ourselves and for our colleagues that we lack this particular skill. So what is it? It's really just defining what should we do and when should we do it. This is one of the easiest ways of understanding how to prioritize things. I always focus on the things that will have the highest impact with the least amount of work. And I always want to focus all of my efforts there first. And then I might find myself being driven into the blue or the purple quadrant. And if you're not incorporating a matrix like this in making decisions, I'd strongly encourage you to think about it. All right, so early in our career, we've gone wide. We've done local SEO. We've tried e-commerce SEO. We've learned a bit of technical. And in the process, we're going to read tons of different blog articles. We're going to be gravitating towards different influencers, whether it's Mark Williams Cook or anyone else. And we're going to want to make sure that we pay attention to this. And what's happening here is we're discovering our ikigai. It's our passion. It's the thing that gets us jacked every day to jump out of bed and get to work. It's the thing that you love. It's the thing that you think about the first thing when you wake up. It's the thing that you space out at when you're sitting at your desk. It's the thing that you should really go deep as much as you can. It's a Japanese term. It means to find your reason for being. And it's critically important to figure out. Also, I strongly advocate, this has been a huge piece of my own career journey, and I would strongly recommend that everybody develops it. And it doesn't matter who you are, we all need this. And basically, I think every single person in the industry needs to look around and think about where they want to be in 6 months, in 36 months, 48 months. What are the things I want to learn or we need to learn in order to get to those different waypoints? Who do we perceive are already there? Who are the people who are doing the best work in those specific niches or subtopics? And then make friends with them. And here's how to do it. This has been the formula that I've embraced. I know that I'm more extroverted than a lot of people in our industry, but I also know that I sweat bullets when I started doing this when I was really early. So I know how hard it is, but I also know that it'll reap huge benefits for you. Here's how to do it. You like posts that you see from your heroes online. You comment on the posts that they make. And you try and build relationships that are authentic with people. We're not talking about AI spam. We're talking about real, authentic comments to people that you want to get to know. When it feels like you've built an actual relationship where you comment, they respond, and you feel like there's some sense of a connection, you can direct message them and you say something super simple like this. Hey, when are we going to get to do a Zoom? I'd really dig meeting you. This specific thing I've used hundreds of times. And what I found is that by using simple messages to get people into Zoom calls, out of all of the times I've ever done it, only 2 people have ever declined the offer. And we're talking many hundreds of people. And so you get these folks into a Zoom, and before you jump into the call, you think about them, what their goals are, and how you could potentially help them. And that concept of helping and giving is the through line for who I am as a person and how I've tried to navigate my career. And what I found is that when I get in the room with these people and I focus on their needs, they, big surprise, know, like, and trust me and want to help me with advice and counsel to help me through those different stages to get from point A to point B. Part of going big, I think, is becoming really involved in community. And there's a ton of different ways to do it. You can join or you can build your own if you don't see something that really meets your needs. I know that for a lot of us community builders, it is incredibly valuable for our careers. And when we talked about that concept of the surface area of luck earlier, this is really the core piece of community. And Chima, I think, really captures it well when she said, community exposed me to a new world of possibilities. It's this concept of like, when we don't have a lot of people around us, all we see is what we know. Whereas when we get to know a huge amount of people, our exposure and our awareness of what's possible expands so widely. I love this saying from Kristine as well. I now have a seat at tables that I would never have gotten before. I think that's incredibly powerful. Also, I think it's really important to know that you don't have to just build your own. You can be a big part of other communities by volunteering. I know that the things that I need help with consistently on the moderation side and also on the promotion side. And you can always get started that way. And you can make a name for yourself in community, and then you'll notice that opportunities come your way. And of course, my favorite thing about communities is that we get to go on fishing trips together. This is a bunch of SEOs last April or 2 Aprils ago in Colorado. Super fun. SEO community, please join. This is a QR code to join us. It's free. I do think it's amazing. There's over 4,000 SEOs in the community now, and that ethic of giving and building authentic relationships is really special, and I think that's what communities really thrived on. Also, it's amazing because I get to meet all my pals when I travel and speak at different events. Okay, so after we've gone deep, the next thing is going big. And you're going to find your own way to do this because we're all unique. We all have different strengths, different weaknesses. Some of us are extroverted, some are introverted. The biggest thing is finding your voice, whatever it is. Let's say you're introverted and you love to write a blog, write articles on LinkedIn like crazy. Get your content out there. Let's say you enjoy people a lot, but you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable on a stage. Start with a podcast. And then I think it's really important to learn how to speak yourself, whether it's a small room that just has 5 people in a meetup, whether there's 20 people in a meetup, whether it's a small regional conference with 40 or 100 people, or whether it's MozCon with a room full of 1,000 people. I think that learning to speak is going to be like adding rocket fuel to your career. I know how hard it is, so I'm going to share some ideas with you to make it easier. And this is why you want to become a good speaker, because no matter what you want, there's always someone who has what you want, who's a better communicator. I think the process of becoming a speaker also helps you become a better thinker. And the reason why is that you have to go really deep into a topic area to be able to speak publicly about it. You'll notice that doors will open for you like crazy. You're going to make friends all over the world. And I have Zoom calls with friends in Australia, friends in the United Kingdom, Canada, all the countries that SEOs practiced in almost. I've had Zoom calls with friends there. It's amazing. Again, learning to speak is the skill that's going to contribute the most to your salary down the road. When you get up to that near director level, you're going to find that speaking and clear communication is the thing that really separates folks. Okay, so be bold. I think that's a really key thing in to really grab onto. This talk, if you were to watch one, this will get you jacked up to go do big things. It really changed the way that I think about a lot of different things in life. There will be roadblocks, right? We know that life can be hard and career growth can feel like just a series of bottlenecks. Some of those look like inertia or status quo bias, like things are going pretty well for me now, so why would I necessarily want to change? There can also be this concept of loss aversion, where, hey, if I try this next big thing and I lose what I already have, that fear has been proven to be about twice as powerful as the hope of gain. And that is just super difficult to overcome. And then there's also imposter syndrome, which we've all faced. Like I felt like after listening to Roxana talk, because it was brilliant. I know it impacts tons of SEOs because when we surveyed people, almost 90% of folks talked about it being really impactful in their lives. Here's why getting past all of those roadblocks is critical. Remember your dream, remember your passion, remember that point off in the distant future that you hope to get to. It's worth it. It's worth pushing through the pain. It's worth pushing through the fear. It's worth pushing through the anxiety. Here are some of the ways that I've dealt with it that I think are repeatable for everybody. In 2022, I came down with COVID. After getting better, I suffered from PTSD from it, and therapy helped me a ton. And it helped me figure out what my triggers were, the things that would bring on anxiety or panic attacks, and it helped me work through it. One of the things that Petra said, which I thought was crazy smart, is why wouldn't we want to optimize our lives just as much as we want to optimize a website, right? This concept of box breathing, if you could take away one skill from today, it would be this. It would be learning how to do box breathing. Basically, what you do is you breathe in for 4 seconds and you hold it for 4 seconds. You then exhale for 4 seconds and you hold it again for 4 seconds. And then you inhale again. And this process of slow, deliberate, long exhalations will actually build up a little bit extra carbon dioxide in your bloodstream, which will calm your heart rate down. And it'll enable you to just take control of what makes you feel like you're completely out of control when you think about speaking on a stage. Also, what I found to be really powerful is when I'm getting ready to talk is I'll think about the ditches that I've already dug. I think about all the things that I've done in my life that were super, super hard. And whenever I'm going to try and do something big or something new, I know that I can do it because I've already done all of these other things. I also like to keep a list of the wins that I've had recently. And I found that revisiting them really energizes me and makes me feel ready to move outside of my comfort zone for whatever big thing I want to try next. It's really, really powerful. The last piece I think is the most important, and it's this concept of giving back. For me, it comes from Hamlet Batista. A lot of us who've been in SEO for a while remember him. He was really the driving force for the Python SEO movement. And I interviewed him a couple times. I never got to hang out with him in real life. But one of the things that when I asked him what was like the most important thing that drove his career, he always told me that it was giving as much as he possibly could. And this concept of giving back, like after I gave this deck the first time at MozCon in 2023, what I found was that, well, I'll get to that at the end. It'll be better if I get to it at the end. But being vulnerable is incredibly important as we're giving back because it shows everybody else how important it is to share and make ourselves vulnerable. Think about how you felt when I shared with you that I suffered from anxiety or PTSD. It brought us closer together, probably, and it made me probably feel like a more authentic person to you. And that is incredibly powerful because it allows you to connect with and become closer to your audience. I think it's also critically important to mentor and coach as many people as you can. We all have time constraints, but this is one of the things that's going to make you the most pleased when you look back. Do you remember my drawing that I had as a goal back from 2003? I had this dream of having a life partner and some, if we were lucky, some kids. This is my wife, Lori, my 2 boys, Calvin and Dylan. These are my 2 dogs, Max and Shadow. And they're my constant companions, actually, my two pals. And I do urge you all to donate if you can today, because this is just an incredibly special cause and really close to my heart. And this is our humble abode. So the last thing that I just wanted to share with y'all is that your goals can change. Your goals can be modified over time. When I gave this deck the first time in 2023, I felt like I'd accomplished my goals. And when I hit that moment, I started to think about what was next and what I wanted to accomplish next. And it was making as much of an impact on the lives of as many people in a positive way as I can. And this whole process of moving through your career is one of self-discovery and hopefully one of impact. And I urge you to try and find as much impact as you can in your own lives, because you'll find it to be the most meaningful thing you can do. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Noah, a lot. Like, you filled our space with love today, and we can really feel it here. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we have no time left for the
Sorry,
questions.
I didn't mean to be long.
So we are moving next to Mark Williams-Cook,
Thanks, guys.
and I know his presentation is also going to be amazing. So thank you very much, Noah, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hello. How am I? I am glowing now after listening to Noah.
Yeah, it was something very, very special. Anton, you usually like to start. So.
Yeah, I want to thank Mark and Kandur again. We got a new logo, or we got our first logo, and it's fantastic. Mark William Cook, thank you very well, guys. If they did it completely for free. If you want to do a logo for yourself, they won't do it for free. No, they'll charge you, but they'll do brilliant work. Thank you very much, and I don't want to take any time. I know it's only half an hour, so it's all yours, guys.
Yeah, and because the topic is so interesting, so let me very briefly introduce Mark. I've been following Mark for a very, very long time, always afraid to write to him. And I was very happy to meet him in one of the chats where we could build a closer connection. And he's a brilliant person. He also has his own charity for children, and is based in the UK. And his agency Kandur is also well known and quite established, and can definitely be recommended to anyone who, if they have capacity, of course, but they always have a line of clients. So if you're lucky, you may become one of them some days. And also, he is more famous with his tool, Also Asked, which you will see on every conference in several speaker decks, and everyone loves it because it can do so many valuable things for SEOs. And actually, it's pretty affordable. So I encourage you, have not yet tried Also Asked, you should do that. And Mark, we'll be talking today about Google exploit, and maybe you want to add a few words about yourself as well. So passing the word to you.
Thank you. No, I think you kind of covered everything I'd like to say there. So I've been in SEO probably around 20 years now. And yeah, with my presentation today, I guess I'm trying to make it a little bit shorter because I'm hoping I can generate some discussion and get some questions for people. So I think I'll just kind of crack on and try and see where we end up with timings. So I'm going to talk about the Google exploit that we found and submitted last year. I know some of you have seen some of the pieces I've published on this before. What I've kind of added for this stream is really some of my own thoughts about how learning these things changed how I think about SEO, how I think about Google, sometimes what I'm going to do and not do with SEO. And I've also kind of introduced as well some new tools that have come off the back of this. So for those that maybe don't know, last year we submitted a vulnerability to the Google bug bounty team, which they paid $13,337 bug bounty for, which, as we said, we did give to a charity called Brave Futures, which is a charity we were supporting that year. That's the maximum bug bounty for this category of bug, and they base it on how likely they think exploitation is and the impact of that. And I'm going to go through quickly how we found that. So I've got this weird kind of luck or bad luck, however you want to call it, of finding these kind of things. So I've got a blog, a personal blog, and you can see there, like, I built a tool in Python to do some link building, and it was doing lots of web scraping, and somehow I ended up with thousands of people's bank statements because it had accidentally found like a security vulnerability in a site. I accidentally found the TV licensing website for the whole UK was taking payments insecurely, and told them about it and on Twitter, and they denied it. And then when it kind of I reported it to the register, so when they posted about it, the whole site went down for planned maintenance. But again, this is like not me doing anything intentional or clever. I just seem to be like a technical klutz. I just bang my head on things and find things. So in terms of this vulnerability, if you do a search on Google in Chrome, you can open, press F11, open your DevTools on the right, and you'll see there's a little network tab that kind of tells you what's happening in your kind of browser, what information is being sent and received. And I would encourage you, if you haven't, if you are so minded, just to do some Google searches and have a look at the kind of things that are happening in your browser, because there's all kinds of interesting things that are going on in there. As I mentioned, I do lots of web scraping stuff for various projects. So this is kind of how we stumbled onto this, which is I just noticed this one particular URL that Google was calling, which looks like kind of nothing. It was just this async callback thing, and this was what was appearing in Webmaster, in the developer console. And this is a screenshot of, you can do these same requests yourself through like a Linux terminal, or you can use Windows to do this. And this is basically below this the response Google was giving, which, don't worry, you're not meant to understand this. It's just like a partial bit of HTML. But I was kind of curious. I was kind of like, what is this? This is interesting. What's Google kind of sending to and fro? And as it happened, I just noticed, as part of the string that we were sending, which is the thing that was happening through the network console, there was this one parameter called FMT prog, which I assume stood for format, maybe. So I just experimented in terms of, I did this request again, and we just deleted this flag. And actually what happened was then we got loads of kind of JSON formatted data sent back to the browser. And again, I've just highlighted sort of the things that caught my eye. I was like, answer technique, byline age date, site quality, pointwise gap, normalized score, server IP. I was like, this looks interesting.
I'm sorry, where exactly did you see this information in the browser? So which tab?
So this is basically in the network tab. This is the request at the top here that is being sent, and this is me just sending it myself using curl. So I'm just saying, send this request to this URL, and because I'm sending it, I can modify the request, which isn't going to happen when you do a Google search. So what I was doing was removing this request, and then the response I get is this in my terminal. So this was just coming straight to the terminal as if I'd done a Google search. And these kind of things, at the time, I hadn't spotted all of these. I was just kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And I didn't think much more of it. And we left this kind of program running for quite a while. And essentially, we ended up with a lot of data. What it kind of told me was there's scores from Google's backend processes. They were being surfaced to use there and then live in the search results, which I'd kind of heard of before, but hadn't thought too much about. It brought me back actually in 2019. I believe it's 2019. It's 2019. I wrote about it. Was this thing called the Twiddler framework, which came from a leaked document from Google, which talked about self-contained programs called Twiddlers, which essentially sit post-ranking and re-rank search queries. So to give you kind of this basic model, you have this big ranking process where Google goes and scores websites. And there's this post-ranking process where we have these set of standalone programs that don't need to talk to each other, that can re-rank things, and they're conditionally run. And this really aligned with what we were seeing in terms of the data. So it just, again, it changed my thinking slightly in terms of the stuff we do for SEO, say like, you know, building links or whatever, impacts this ranking stage. Whereas a lot of the post-ranking stuff that these twiddlers are looking at is things like user metrics and how people are reacting to the SERP. And that's more kind of like a general marketing impact. So there's some really great examples in the DOJ documents, if you haven't seen them, of specifically what they're doing. There was around 2,000 different properties, and they conditionally appeared. And by that, I mean, for some searches, we would get certain properties back, and then for another search, you wouldn't get those properties, which falls in line with the documentation we saw on this Twiddler framework of their conditionally run. So again, that made sense to me. The one I kind of talked about the most was this site quality metric, which I was like super interested in, right? Because it sounds like something SEOs would be interested in. And that was where the last kind of bit of my hair went, trying to work out what it was. So I was trying to do like Spearman correlation studies against various like link metrics, things like that, and couldn't really find much. There is a site quality score patent. Word of warning, it's very old, but it does talk about essentially, to you know, layman's terms, it's very much around users Googling for your website or for your brand, if you want to call it that, and selecting you specifically from the SERP. So it's all about essentially user interaction data. And that does seem to correlate when I look at the sites, because we got the scores for the sites. There's some, if I showed you some of the top ranking sites, you would maybe think they're odd, because it would be like a site that isn't mobile friendly, that looks like it was built in 1998, has got like a 0.8 site quality score, which is super high. It did make me think about what happens when there's no user data. There is another patent called Predicting Site Quality Score, which talks about building phrase models of known sites that they've scored, and then essentially trying to match them up with new websites to make an estimate before they get that data. So again, it changed my view that there is a site quality metric that's measured almost entirely on user behavior. Because if you said to me site quality, I would think it's something to, you know, more to do with the actual site. And I got a list of all of these scores. And the other thing that really interested me was they are not applied on a domain level. They are like, if you have a forum dot also asked, for instance, that would have a different score to the www dot also asked, which again, I found interesting, because there's lots of discussions around subfolders, subdomains, that kind of thing. But it changed my view on, there is a very clear definition Google obviously has of what is a site and what is a domain. These are separate kind of concepts. The spread of site quality over a few million domains looks like this, which would indicate to me, this looks similar for those of you who used to see like PageRank distribution, which would make me think it's like a logarithmic score, not a linear score. We accidentally found out something super interesting, which was there wasn't any scores we'd collected below 0.4, but that was because this data collection was done only on SERPs that were featuring specific kinds of rich results, things like PAAs, featured snippets. So we accidentally discovered that if your site quality is below 0.4, you are not eligible for those rich snippets at all. So it doesn't matter what you do. There was no occurrence over millions of results of anyone having a rich snippet without a site quality score above 0.4. So again, that changed my view of, sometimes you're trying to win a race, you don't realize you're not even in. So sometimes I've had conversations or seen people saying, oh, here's how you optimize for featured snippets because we don't have any, and this is what we're trying to do. But perhaps they're not even eligible for them and they don't know. So it's nothing to do with like their content. And this, again, this made me laugh. So this is a screenshot of my own beautiful website I used to have about Dungeons and Dragons that I had made for fun. It had no adverts on. I made it for a genuine reason, that it was hard to find this information without ending up on horrible wiki sites covered in ads or on terrible Reddit threads of people arguing. I thought the content was good. I got emails from people saying the content is really helpful for us in like the first few months of it being published, which is pretty rare to have like strangers emailing you saying how helpful it was. Google seemed to think the same. We went from 0 to about 20,000 visitors in the first 3 months. And then, of course, the HCU came along and Google did this. And we had like basically 100% traffic loss after several months, right? So my question was, well, is the content bad or am I not in the race? So I did an experiment of just taking one of the pages that we used to rank well for and copy and pasting it onto LinkedIn Pulse. And then I waited 72 hours and then it ranks #1 in the AIO and #1 organically. I think it's like #3 now after 4 months of not touching it. So again, that changed my view on sometimes it's not the thing you are very, everyone's got this target fixation sometimes on it's the content, how to improve it. And that's a good thing, but sometimes it's just not that. Sometimes you're not in the race for another reason. Very quickly, how long we got? So yeah, I'll try and wrap this up in the next couple of minutes and whiz through this because I know some people have seen this. I covered some bits before about Google using so they have systems to try and work out consensus, to work out whether information is appropriate to show. And we saw they have these scores for counting how many passages agree, disagree, or neither with the general consensus, and they calculate a consensus score. Something that came off the back of this was from SEO Notebook. It's a brilliant idea of using GPT to see if content aligns with the consensus or not. Because what would you need to do to check the consensus? You would need a massive data set and see commonly what's said. So actually using like an LLM, for me, it seems like a fantastic use for anyone to be able to kind of do this and be able to automate a workflow to check consensus. And I want to be super clear as well. I'm not saying, this isn't a case of score high means good. It's contextual, right? So we found Google labeling queries like if they were a debunking query, like is the earth flat is a debunking query, the kind of results that appear are very much strongly aligned with the consensus as you would expect. If it's maybe like a political question, it doesn't make sense that they would only give the consensus. They intentionally, I would posit, try and mix up the consensus in some queries. But it's just good to know, like, if you're like in a YMYL space, that would be something I'd think about. There's loads of other interesting stuff we uncovered. I'm going to whiz through, like, if the query has date intent, okay, fairly obvious. But what was not obvious to me was, and I've got examples of these if you visit these URLs, I was looking through these queries that were marked as true. They had date intent and they made sense to me, because they all started with like when. And then I found some where I was like, what? Is trash free in Denver? How is that like have date intent? And then someone from Denver actually told me and said, well, there's certain days where the trash collection's free. So that made me realize then the categorization that is happening isn't just based on the words in the query, but on information further downstream, whether it's the content of the site or how the user interacts with the SERP that Google's determining that. There's loads of these different types of classifiers as well. So when I mention them, don't just think that's everything. There's 8 that I particularly wanted to focus on. I've brought these up before. These appear for lots of queries. There's lots of queries that have multiple classifications. These particularly interest me because they're very easy to understand. Again, I've given 100 examples of each one on this URL, and their distribution looks like this across around 80, 90 million queries. So why is that helpful? Well, the theory was, depending on the categorization of the query, which happens, that's, I would say, is likely to determine what type of SERP features are going to appear or not appear. So I went to Hugging Face, which is a brilliant AI community if you're not part of it, downloaded DistillBERT, which is a small version of the BERT model, and trained it on 5 million queries and the labels that I got from Google. DistillBERT's basically just like a smaller, faster version of BERT with most of the performance. I thought it'd be really quick, but basically had to leave my computer on for like 2 and a bit days. It was just heating up the whole house. But we've ended up with this tool that's free to use for you. You can put in any kind of informational queries, and it will give you a good prediction based on the training data of how Google might assign a query class to them. There's rqpredictor.streamlit.app. Why is this useful? I've partnered with Tomek from ZipTie. Tomek's doing some really amazing work logging when AIOs appear, and he's doing it actually like from logged in sessions, which is really interesting because the appearance of AIOs is way higher when you're logged in than when you're logged out. We're just in the final stages of analysis. I hoped I'd have it for you today, but I don't. But we're going to publish basically how often AIOs appear for each of these types of categories. So this can help you with your determining where you may or may not get traffic. If you subscribe to Core Updates, that's where I'm going to send out the results to that. There's no strings attached to that. It's a free newsletter. Send it every Monday. You can unsubscribe if you like after you got what you want. The last bit of information I just wanted to give, which I hadn't published before, was I also got data on how long people also asked questions had been in the SERP for before they changed. And this I found fascinating. So it appears that around 50% were younger than 6 months and 99% were gone within 21 months. So despite these obviously web pages being around for years and years, it would indicate for whatever reason that like PAAs, as one example, is a transient feature. So if you are optimizing for them, you should expect that you will lose them. You know, there's a 99% chance if you win a PPAA that you will not have it in a couple of years' time. You know, they don't stick around. They just bounce and go. So that's maybe another thing that you can just tell your boss, your manager, like, it's not my fault. We lost it. That's how it is. So hopefully we've got a little bit of time to do questions. And have you donated yet is my question to all of you. If anyone does donate, you get priority for any question. But if anyone has questions about any of that or any general SEO question, happy to try and answer.
Thank you so much. I have lots of questions, but we don't really have lots of time left, but no worries. I think Culture Digital is asking if you are planning to build a tool where you can input a URL and it gives these top level twiddlers to you back.
Yeah, so I mean, it's my guess that we're seeing twiddlers. You know, I don't have the names of them. All I have is from that network data, names of query classes, names of metrics that are being used, and I guess we could show which ones were shown based on which query, but I don't know if you could build like because it changes so wildly between searches. I don't know if you could build like a model to predict that. And I imagine twiddlers probably are coming and going very, very quickly. So sorry.
And sometimes bugging.
That's a really polite long way to say no.
Those PA questions are disappearing, or the answer to them is disappearing?
Yeah, sometimes one, sometimes the other. So the thing I've learned lots about PAAs, funnily enough, running Also Ask. One thing that we've learned, so we tried to build this timeline feature, which basically you when you Google a query, it keeps track of which PAA questions are showing for that query, so you can track intent shift over time. And the thing that I learned is one, that Google is constantly like A/B testing a whole set of these questions. So regardless, they will kind of rotate even the wording of the question. It'll be the same question, but worded differently with the same URL. So the answer to that question is, I believe the actual sites were disappearing from the question because that was the metric, this how old the passage was that had been there. The other thing I've noticed about PAAs recently that I hadn't noticed before is they're becoming very, very location specific. So it's actually Arnaut Helmans that brought this up to me. He gave me quite a few examples recently of output from Also Asked where it was talking about specific cities. And going back and looking into that, it is something Google seems to be taking into account every search. So hopefully in time for Brighton SEO, which is like in 2 weeks, we're launching now the feature you can specify your precise location or city or village or wherever when you do the search as well. So that's actually something that's changing. So again, the reason I think the sites are changing is because the back end data we got isn't necessarily related to the specific user. I think that's more the age that they have, how long that passage has been showing.
I'll probably get lots of hate for this question, but I need to ask because I know that's what people are interested in. So, did you find any correlation, commonality, or whatever else relation in between your findings and that Google leak that preceded what you shared in public?
Yeah, there was some overlap, but not so much. And I think that's, so in like the metrics we found, for instance, there's like nothing about, say, PageRank, right? But we know Google still uses PageRank because they told us they have a modified version they use. And I think that's because the information we're seeing is only the stuff that's surfaced because it's helpful in feature generation or it's helpful in re-ranking. Or something that's being done immediately on the front end. Whereas I think the Google leak was maybe talking about back end systems a lot, talking to each other. So I'm not sure how big the crossover there is. And also sometimes it is quite hard to determine what's happening just from metric names. So talking specifically about the Google leak, we don't know how much of that stuff was used in ranking versus crawling versus indexing, etc.
Why did you decide to let Google know about this situation? Why didn't you decide to leave it and enjoy a very prosperous life as an SEO?
Yeah, so I mean, being frank, I don't think there's anything that came from that would allow you to like cheat at SEO, and that's why I'm kind of happy talking about it, in that it's definitely refined my understanding of how Google's working. And I think it's useful to understand when you talk about concepts of, say, they're looking at EAT, to have some kind of idea of what the actual mechanisms behind that are. And what were the options really? We're not going to do, our business is primarily agency stuff. We're not doing black hat stuff for clients. That's where our business is. If anything, it's in our interest if there's fewer people doing black hat stuff, because it makes it easier for like clients and such. And Google were offering like match donations as well. So it wasn't to get the money, wasn't the motivation, as I say, because we gave that away anyway. So it was just to learn what we could. Try and summarize and share that, and then I thought a charity might as well benefit from it. We've got to do something. We work in marketing, right? Like we're doing now. We've got to make some good happen.
Do you think there's something left there? So if some SEOs want to discover some interesting code and try to query Google again,
I know there is 100%, which is why I was telling people to go and look there, because there's other stuff there. There's definitely other stuff there. Yes. Yeah.
So they need to do that in the network tab, right?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. Yeah. But there's definitely still front end stuff. It's good to read about Protobuf if you haven't, which is a rabbit hole I went down. It's the hey, nice donation. It's Google's got a few really interesting formats they use to send data around super quickly and super compressed. And I only just started learning about Protobuf when I found this. Interestingly, one of the developers we had already done some client work using Protobuf, but that's something that's worth reading about.
Okay, unfortunately, I have so many more questions, but we have run out of time. So I think I'll find other opportunity to ask them. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us today. Where can people find you, and if you're open to that?
Yeah, I'm mainly active on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. If you Google Mark Williams Cook, you'll find me. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one.
Thank you so much. Please stay with us. We have Alan Bleiweiss next with Technical SEO, so you don't want to miss his talk as well.
Use Zofu.com to grow your in-funnel prompt visibility.
What the hell?
We measure your brand visibility for solution discovery prompts.
Oh, really?
We benchmark how your brand's doing across these prompts.
No.
And we show you the resources that ChatGPT uses and cites. We find the most cited page, then we analyze that page's copy, comments, and reviews to find the frequently unanswered questions.
Oh,
Then we
really?
develop survey questions and a testing approach.
What the hell?
Now you can pitch first-party findings and empower publishers to empower their audience at the bottom of the funnel. Let's collaborate.
Hello, Alan. I'm incredibly happy to see you here.
Yeah, hi,
Can
Alan.
you try to say something because it seems you have the sound off or muted? So you need to try to recover.
Can you
it.
hear? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Fantastic, and I hope you won't speak on a double speed like a commercial we just have with Garrett French. And Alan tried to actually to kill me last night because he sent me some message. I was asleep, so I didn't read them, and he just deleted them after that. And messages seems to be he was saying he is not well and he won't be here today or tonight. But I didn't see anything because he get much better, delete all these messages and just write me about that. So I wake up and say, okay, all good. Okay, it's all yours, guys. Go ahead.
Okay. I think that everyone knows Alan, and he's very famous for his technical SEO audits and incredible impact positive impact they have on the businesses of those who order these audits from Alan. And I also made. They are so famous, in fact, that I also made my own webinar with Alan some time ago. So thank you, Alan, for joining us today. Tell us more about yourself, if you will, or you can jump straight into the presentation.
Дякую. Доброго дня, друзі. Мене звати Alan Bleiweiss. Good afternoon, friends. My name is Alan Bleiweiss. My family came from Ukraine to America before I was born. This event that you're attending right now is really important. It's helping the cats and the dogs in Ukraine, but it's doing much more than that. The men and the women who are still in Ukraine right now, fully 3 years into the full-scale invasion, who have volunteered to help these animals with their food needs, with medicines. Anything that you can donate helps give those people hope. It gives them a sense of purpose in an insanely upside-down world. So please donate what you can. And with that, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen and I'll begin. Does that work?
Yeah, of course. I'm weirdly hearing you, but other people say that the sound is okay. But maybe you've got open some other program where it requires you to share your microphone. So if you have any other tabs open that you don't need, maybe you can close them, leaving this one
No,
only.
I do not. I do not. So let's see what's going on here.
But you just share your presentation and I'll try to see what I can do on my end, maybe.
Okay.
Here we have
Okay.
it.
All right. I have a lot of information to go over. This deck is already up on my website in PDF form, so that if you'd like to get my deck afterwards, you can go to my website and it's on the SEO for GAI link. Just a little bit of background. I've been doing internet for a really long time. I started in internet web development, and then I began integrating SEO in 2000. I began specializing in audits in 2006. I do work for clients of all sizes. However, a lot of my experience is working with global enterprises and nationally recognized businesses here in America as well as elsewhere. All right, generative AI. It's rapidly changing. There's all sorts of things that we already know from how long we've been working with it and interacting with it and experimenting and testing. There's a lot that we still need to learn, and it's ever changing. Here are the good news. Generative AI services, LLMs, require the most efficient access possible to information that they can find online. That's clear. And because of the resource costs of getting information, processing it, and then providing it to people doing queries, dictates that as time passes, they're going to need to rely more and more on efficient information retrieval access and processing. This is just a standard reality of how this works. Even though there are differences between this and SEO, it's their attempt to understand the world that we created. Biggest downfall that I see people have when it comes to SEO in general, but also specific now to LLMs, not understanding the complexity of what's involved. You don't need to understand every single nuance step that they go through. We don't know all of the steps. They won't ever tell us. However, information architecture is at the heart of all of it. So if you understand information retrieval and you apply that to your work, you're going to be better positioned. It's about topical discovery and topical focus. How deep do we go in providing answers to all the important questions? How do we organize that content? How do we present it? Right? And do we go far enough? These all matter. And all of this impacts brand identity even more so for LLMs and GAI answer services than for SEO at this point. They push their magic marketing words and they claim to be able to do all sorts of things. The reality, it's not intelligent, even though they call it artificial intelligence, right? Their own data has a serious content freshness issue. They make mistakes constantly and they say it's a built-in feature. And then there's the whole legal consideration. They don't crawl frequently enough for real world needs. And they're using a technique called RAG, I'll get into that in a moment, to try and fix the critical flaws in their own systems. What is RAG? Retrieval Augmented Generation. They take what they've gathered in their LLM data set, they process it based on the question posed or the prompt, and then they go out onto the internet to try to get current information. But they're not really good at that yet. There's still all sorts of weaknesses in that. There's all sorts of flaws in that. It's starting to help and make improvements, but they got a long way to go. Nobody owns the concept of RAG. It's an open platform service and not proprietary. So hopefully more LLMs will make use of it to try and make their answers and their output better. Then there's the whole legal consideration. I'm not going to get into that. You need to be aware of it if you have a website and you need to decide, do we want LLMs to take our data or not? So you want to get found in artificial intelligence output. Great. Many of the concepts we already know from a technical perspective specific to SEO still apply. Okay, crawl efficiency is critical. Overall information architecture and how that impacts topical organization and topical focus reinforcement is all integral to being able to be accepted by and made use of from these GAI services. They do not process client-side JavaScript. So where you can get away with it for SEO, I have never advocated the use of client-side JavaScript for SEO. There are still to this day many reasons to not use it. Now we have a new, just as important and potentially soon to be more important reason. LLMs do not process client-side JavaScript. These are highly technical systems that attempt to make use of data they gather in a new way, right? We just want to make sure at the technical level, we're not interfering with that and that we're helping make their work more effortless. So, if you want to be really visible in artificial intelligence output, you need to understand even more than ever the need to answer all the important questions about whatever it is that you're offering or you're claiming to provide insight or knowledge on or you're trying to sell. The more answers you provide in a more organized manner, the more likely you're going to get the value visibility from AI, just like it's going to be true for SEO. They don't process schema structured markup at this point in the same way that SEO does. However, they're adapting to it more, again, because as these companies rush to market, they thought they could just deliver a product that was kind of okay, but they've learned already a lot about the need to get even more clarity of understanding, and schema is going to be a part of that, especially JSON's being adapted. There's a new robots.txt file type offering being proposed as a web standard called LLMs.txt. It's a plain text file, but it's in a new environment and it can get really overwhelming. So save yourself some time and go and check out Firecrawl. They've got a tool to be able to generate this text file automatically for many needs. I also recommend that you check out Gianluca Ferrari's article on semantics, because while semantics is topically related and therefore content relevant, it also matters from a technical perspective, as I mentioned. How are you linking to all of your pages internally? Are you properly nesting content hierarchically? Are you using proper nesting of headers within your actual content itself? What are the relationships of one section of a page to another, one page to another, one section of a site to another? All of these matter. If you want to stay out of the LLMs, you can take steps to do so to a certain degree, but it's a matter of who's going to respect these and who's not. Google has the Google Extended User Agent Identity, so you can include that in your robots.txt file. Apple has a similar identification method, so if you want the Apple bot to stay away, you can use that. And then I'm going to leave it with this. If you want to track what your real visibility is, the best resource available right now is from Dana De Tomaso, one of the most brilliant people in our industry. And she's got this tutorial on how to integrate tracking into your Google Analytics. So I highly recommend that you check that out. If you want to download this deck in PDF form, it's available on my website. And recommendations to SEOcharity, I highly recommend this charity. I've been supporting them since the beginning. It's invaluable. And I'll leave you with this. You need to understand that technical aspects of your web presence are more critical than they ever were. And where you used to be able to get away with a lot of things technically, like technical cruft and crawl inefficiency and having all sorts of broken links on your site and not answering things completely enough or burying important information deep inside of a blog, you're going to be able to get away with those things less and less now. So please take the time to understand how important it is to ensure that you're technically proficient when it comes to serving your content to your users, and where humans, search engines, and now LLM services are all users. If anybody's got any questions, I'm available here. I'm available on Blue Sky. You can reach me through my website. I'm happy to answer questions that people have about the technical considerations. And that's it. I know this was a really fast presentation. There's a lot that I needed to go over. So if you have questions now, that's great. I'm happy to answer them.
I was
If not-
muted. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alan. Yeah, there are actually a few questions. Just okay. You've shown the LLM's file and the guide to how to create it. Do you think that every other website should do that, not only the ones that are SaaS or that have documentation or that are very technical websites? Do you think that the website like yours should have the llms.txt web file? Do you think that SEOcharity.com should have llms.txt web this file? Should we create it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's not an industry standard yet. It's a proposed standard. The rate of adaptation is not very high at this point. However, more and more businesses are making use of it because it offers potential aid for the LLMs to figure out exactly what your site is about, what your messaging is, and what the information is within it. So my suggestion is, right now, it can't hurt to make use of it. I would not consider it a critical need, but if you want to make use of it, you can do so, and you can see how it might help. That's the reality where we are right now.
That was actually my next question. So when we're doing this kind of implementations, llms.txt, everything else around LLMs, how do we actually track if it's helpful or not helpful?
There's not a really good way to track impact in a direct manner at this point. More and more tool providers are providing reports on LLM, GAI, GEO, AGI visibility. And like I said, I provide a link in my deck to Dana's tutorial on how to integrate it, Google Analytics. But if you were to go ahead and implement an LLMs.txt file today, there's no real way to know if that's going to make a big impact or not at this point. It's just too early in the process. There's too many other considerations. The whole LLM and resulting answer engine service out there across all these different providers is still too secretive. We don't have enough clear access. What I've found in my own work is that it's not a lot different than what I do for SEO at strategic level. Somebody hires me to do an SEO audit. I don't just focus on one aspect of SEO because there might be 8 different other problems that are just as important to worry about or to address, even though you might not see that relationship on your own when you're looking at what's going on, right? I don't want to leave any stone unturned based on resource limitations for how to implement and what to implement.
Okay, there is like a very connected question, maybe just very briefly. Culture Digital, who is going to follow you on Bluesky right now, is asking if LLM TXT will go the way of humans TXT and really fast.
I don't know. We're all in a learning process right now, right? The concept of humans.txt is hilarious to me, but I mean, you need a file, and robots.txt is really specific in what its purpose is. So while you can include disallow instruction for individual LLM services, you can't really go beyond what the robots.txt standard is for helping LLMs. That's why they're coming out with this proposed standard for a separate file. I have really good visibility in a whole range of questions that people have about the services I specifically offer that's refined to my unique services, right? I don't properly use schema.org structured markup on my own website. And yet I still have really strong visibility in all of them, right? I don't have an LLM's TXT file. Experiment, test, be willing to adapt as we get more knowledge. But humans.txt, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Has anything changed in your workflow of how you do technical audits after these generative AI, emergence, AI overviews, all this stuff? Have you changed anything? Have you introduced something new? Has your approach changed?
Actually, not one single thing in my audits has changed. I have been advocating brand signals as important to SEO for at least 15 years. I have been advocating proper technical efficiency all of these years. I have been advocating topical organization, topical depth, the need to answer all the important questions. All of the methods that are useful to and relevant to LLMs today. And mind you, they have all sorts of shortcomings, so they can't yet make use of a lot of technical processes. I only know those are coming, though. It's the only logical reality if they're ever going to be able to scale even more, and where they hopefully will eventually want to provide better answers to questions. It's all the same, but it's even more important now than ever.
People are sometimes who were ranking quite high, they say that they are losing traffic because of the emergence of those AI overviews and who their queries and all these kind of things. So, like when you are doing audit, what do you currently promise the traffic growth or anything like that? Or I've also seen that you are doing topic clusters like around like content optimization around the topics and all of that. So nothing has changed of that in that regards to you, because many informational queries are now taken over by those AI overviews and all these kind of things. So it kind of seems that you might be sometimes like wanting to place less emphasis on the informational queries, for example, or do them in some other manner, for example. I don't know. So nothing changed at all for you.
Yeah, so because of the fact that this new channel, this new path to accessing knowledge is so radically different in terms of their approach, there's a legitimate concern that people should have about what do we need to change to adapt. And the truth is, it's still too early in the wild, wild west crazy days of AI services to have high confidence that any significant change from how we go about our work is something that we should be jumping on now. Conversely, everything I've seen and everything I've found, in spite of the flaws in those systems, is just putting more emphasis on what is logically going back to the core concepts of information retrieval, topical relationships, brand authority, topical trust. It's all really the same. So you need to decide, do we want to be included or not? And if we don't want to be included, we're going to need to rely on SEO anyway. That's not changing. However, these services are taking over enough of the SEO aspects of discovery that we would be wise to want to be present there for sure. How it all works out in the end, what percentage comes from AI and doesn't, it's all still too early to really nail down a specific, this is how we should approach it in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Another question from Culture Digital, and it is very important one. So, as an ex-military police, you likely have a really good record of getting developers to implement your fixes. What's your secret? And that's really a problem for many of us, these communications and making them actually do what we need to the website.
I'm not as successful as I would want to be. However, what success I have from that is because I come from understanding web developer mindset, which means I understand the psychology of presenting a web development team a 50 or 60 page document that says, whoever caused this needs to stop doing drugs. Right? That's a wake up call and it shocks them. However, I provide guidance in educational methods as to helping explain why something is not the way it should be and why it's important to resolve it from a business goal perspective. You need to get developers to accept the fact that they're being paid to help the business succeed. And I don't tell them for this one issue, here's the only one way to fix it. If there's 3 ways or 5, I say whatever way is best for your needs, use that method. Just understand we need to fix this. However, I also respect their own limitations because they already have a full plate. They already have pressure to deliver. They probably work in cycles like sprints, and they can't just rush and drop everything. They already have requirements to deliver. So I'm as respectful as possible to their reality at the same time that I'm like, here's the bottom line. Either you help the business succeed or we find other developers.
That's when business is on your side, but sometimes it really takes lots of back and forth before you actually do that. Laura is saying that it's amazing and thank you, getting that to her list. I'm not sure about the question, but maybe you'll understand it better. She's curious, when do you think we'll be able to quantify this data and what needs to happen first in layman's terms?
In order to quantify data at the truest level, in order to quantify the data properly, we're going to need Google and Bing and OpenAI and these other service providers to give us proper access to the data itself in a more direct manner. I do not anticipate any of them ever doing that to enough of a degree to satisfy my desired needs, my desired access. So we have to use patchwork solutions just like we do for SEO. Even Google Search Console does not give you completely 100% accurate data. Google Analytics does not give you completely 100% accurate data, right? We're going to hopefully get more data and better data, but I don't anticipate get it to the degree that we truly need. Although I think we're going to get a lot more data eventually. I just don't know how long it's going to take for them to be willing to provide it and what that's going to look like.
Okay. Thank you so much, Alan. We ran out of time. Next is Kristine Schachinger. I really appreciate you, Kai, and sharing your knowledge today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Kristine. It's so nice to see you finally here. It's been a while. You are muted again, the same way as was. And Anton, maybe you unmute yourself.
I said it's so dark on the screen, but my room is so light, so I'm not sure why. Sorry about
It's
that.
because you have light behind you.
Oh.
Great, Kristine. It's nice to see you here, and we have today's our last session, and so we don't really just constrain in time. So if you go a couple of minutes over, no tragedy. Thank you for doing it, and guys. During today's, we collected about $350 so far, which is not bad. Putting together with sponsors' money is almost $8,000, which
Wow,
is
that's amazing.
staggering amount. But it's still, if you have extra spare $5, do donate. Okay, thank you guys. It's all yours.
I don't know who doesn't know Kristine. It seems that Kristine and SEO and advanced SEO are like synonyms. I think everyone knows and appreciates what Kristine shares due to, I think you've done, I don't know, maybe more than 1,000 audits, yes? And Kristine is,
I'm sure.
yeah?
maybe, I'm not sure. I've never
Kristine
counted.
is really well versed in Google updates and how to recover websites and all these kind of things. Like there is no topic that Kristine doesn't know in SEO and on a really deep and profound level. And what Kristine does is she really is able to help your website to recover from whatever hit it. And the most important question is sometimes to understand, to identify what really hit your website. And I think we've got a very good timing today because the update has just finished. So will people be able to identify what hit them, this update or something else, and what to do next, and how to what next steps should be, what is the workflow, whatever else? Kristine, I'm passing the word to you. I'll be learning lots of new things today, I'm sure.
Thank you. Just one moment. Sorry.
Kristine also has 2 cats, yes, or 3?
I have 3. Yeah, 3
3,
rescues.
sorry.
No, that's okay. 3 rescues I have. So, okie dokie. I'm just gonna do a share screen, correct?
Yeah, you can use the plus sign underneath the video. It's the plus icon, and share your presentation in there.
I know we went over this the other day and I just totally blanked. Sorry, guys. Okay.
It's all right.
Am I screen sharing or do you have the presentation preloaded?
Yeah, there is a presentation and also screen share, whatever you find more suitable. Presentations is sometimes more convenient because you'll be able to see the screen and us.
Oh, that's a good thing.
If
Sorry,
you want, of
everybody.
course, to
I
see
had a
us.
very busy week and we went over this and they told me what to do and my brain just promptly forgot it, so I apologize. It is uploading right now.
Did you have any opportunity to check the results of the update yet? I know it's too
No.
early, but we always jump into the Search Console to see what is happening, all these kind of things.
I don't have any clients right now that are waiting to recover. I already did that at the end of the year. So I'm just seeing if any current, I did notice one client that, you know, I engaged with several times during the year. I did have an issue, so I am going to, I'm going to let them know today, later today. So this is taking a little bit to process up. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you are loading it as a file. Maybe you have it in your Google Drive, and you can share.
No, it's just uploading. Yeah, I don't have it, unfortunately. I don't use Drive, so.
Okay.
Well, I can just do a share screen. I don't know why it's taking so long.
Let's do that. Let's do.
Okay, yeah. I would be the problem child, wouldn't I?
Oh.
Okay.
We got so far donation today, $100.
Nice.
And a donor didn't put his name. I can see his name, but he didn't put his name here, so I'll leave it this way.
Okay,
nice.
since I can't see, are we all ready to go?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I did put your buy me a coffee on here, Anton, just because when I'm going to put this up on SlideShare later, so it'll be an active link. So today we're here to talk about which update it is. So I find often when people come to me about their downturns, they think it's something that it's not, and so they don't take the proper action or get the proper people to start fixing things. Also, a lot of people think they had a helpful content update, which they didn't. We'll explain that at the end, how you know it's pretty easy. So this is my kitty buddy. He's a rescue Toiger Bengal. I had to just show him off a little bit. So, so basically, when this happens, you go to GSC and you see something like this, right? You wake up and like, oh, your traffic's gone, or you see something like
Sorry,
this.
Kristine, we have
Okay.
some delay in between you showing the slides. Sorry.
You have what? I'm sorry.
There was a
Okay.
slight delay in between your showing the slides, so just to let you know.
Oh, okay. Are we on the smiley face?
No, now yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. So you either see a cliff drop off or over time you notice this is happening to your website. So we're going to go over
Yes.
some of the things that it's not, and then the things that it can be when it comes to the updates. So this is from Google's debugging search traffic drops. It's a really good page that they put together on how you can kind of help figure out what's going on. It's not 100% correct, but it does a pretty good job. Are you seeing the Smurf? We caught up?
No.
No? No Smurf?
There are just graphs.
Okay, this is taking a really long time to.
A large drop and algorithmic update. Yeah, now we see it.
That's like a full minute. It's a really long time. I don't know what's going on. So, but it's not a straight. So if less than 20%, it's really unlikely that it's an algorithm update. You know, if you have a drop or 2 to 4, 3 to 5, or something like that. That's 40%, 70%, even loss, depending on what kind of update it was. Are we seeing Smurf with the 99%?
No, maybe you can send me this last version of your presentation. I'll upload it from my
Okay,
from my
I
site.
sent it to you guys this morning, but let me get you. Yeah, let me get you the
Like
link.
the last version.
Sorry, everybody. This is so weird. Oh, I would be the problem one at the end of the day.
Yeah, it happens
Okay.
sometimes.
It does, I know. I just hate it when it happens when I'm the one. Okay. Here you go. And where do you want me to send it?
Just to my email.
Ooh. It's in Anton's email right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Anton gave it to me. Anton gave it to me. Okay.
Yeah. Just a little bit while we're doing this. That I appreciate so much, Anton, and you were there. So it my heart when I heard the stories in the early days when no one was doing this yet. So. Oh no, have a call running in the background, but it could have been it. There's some delay in the transmission of the, so. I have 3 rescues. I have 2 Savannah rescues. Were you able to get it?
Yeah, just a moment. I just doing this.
The good thing is the presentation is not past time, so we'll be okay. So when it comes to these updates, something I would really like to stress for people is Google likes to say, like, you didn't do anything wrong and you don't have to worry about you getting your traffic back, because you may not. And when it comes to things like core updates, actually all my clients who listen to me always get their traffic back. So give people a little bit of hope. If it's an HU update, we'll talk about that later. That's a little bit different. And spam is, you'll know what you're doing wrong and you can just fix those things. Because if you're doing spam you get a spam update issue, you're being spammy. So I'd also like to caution people about using AI content directly out of the box or minimally edited. Google has said a lot of things about not really thinking that's great content, but I've seen people with manual actions where they lose all their traffic. And we even get the manual actions lifted, but they don't get their traffic back. So normally when you have manual action and it gets lifted, within a month or 2, they'll give you your traffic back as long as they know you're not doing the same wrong things. But this one client I've been working with, they got all their manual action removed 6 months ago, and they still only have 1/3 of their traffic back. Yay, I see it on the screen. Awesome.
I cannot get it processed by Restream, so maybe we can just move on with whatever you have, and when I have it, I'll just let you know.
Oh, I see it on your screen.
Like I
Is
see
that
your
my screen?
presentation.
Oh, that's my screen.
Yeah.
Sorry. Are you having problems getting it uploaded?
Okay, it's now okay.
Yay. Sorry, guys.
It should be
Okay.
working fine now. So I've jumped to this 99. Oh, sorry. You just let me know when I need to next slide.
Okay, we'll go one more slide forward. I think that's where we were.
Forward?
Go forward one slide.
Forward, yes. This one.
Yeah. So if we were talking about your traffic drop, so the first thing you want to do when you see a drop like that is go straight to the Google. It's the worst name in the world. It's the incident ranking incidents report if you're going to Google it. But you'll come here and you'll see if there's an update running or if there's a new update running. But just because the update happens at the same time your drop happened does not mean you have necessarily an algorithmic issue. So you have to go through some steps first before you determine whether that's the possibility or not. So we can go to the next slide. And this is the individual report. So you can see I changed this today when I heard that it finished. So this is the current core update. You see when it started running and when it stopped running. Common confusion for people, especially those harmed by the HCU in 2023, was it 2023, I think, is a core update and the HCU and a core update all ran together. So people see that they're down and they heard all this stuff about the HCU, and so they think it's the HCU. But when you actually go look at the times of the updates, it's not the HCU. So it occurs in this time frame. It doesn't occur outside this time frame. So if they're running update after update after update, check those dates tight and see where you fall in them. And that is the update that you're being affected by. So if we go forward from here, I probably just talked ahead of myself. Exactly, yeah. So check the dates of the rollout and confirm that it's within those dates. But was it an algorithm update? Well, maybe or maybe not. We still don't know because we still have to eliminate other things. So one, ask the client. This is not to get answers from the client. This is just to know things like I had a client who turned off a very large ad campaign, and that's why they dropped, right? So but the client chat is important for those reasons. And if you go forward, someone said, I've seen all your slides. I won't say anything. Let me go next slide. So there are other reasons that you see a downturn that's not about algorithms or even site issues, and that is they stopped an ad campaign, news traffic or discovered traffic. I had a funny one. They asked me to find out why they dropped, and I went and found out they had an 8-week news cycle, which is unbelievable. They were in crypto, and it was XR stories for 2 months. So they got massive traffic for 2 months because the news cycle went away, but they didn't. They just had a lot of discover and news traffic, and then it, like, you have to tell us what to fix. I'm like, well, there's nothing to fix. Your site's fine. It did really well for 2 months. Also, changing content focus can do that. Focus on your site. So when you talk to your client, they're almost wrong about it. You know, pejorative. Just don't know SEO. So I heard from, I had a insist here spam update issue. I'm like, no, like 100% spamming. It's a spam. So wrong, but you want to just hear their side of it, and then you can also pick up clues on maybe things that they did to the site that could have caused a problem. Next one. Let's go. And they don't always tell you the truth. So like I go to a client and I'm like, did you buy links or did you use AI content? And they're like, no, I didn't use that. And you're like, okay, I'm like your doctor. I don't care that you drank all last night. I just need to know that you did. So with clients, we're not always going to tell you the full story. So you just take what they say as a guideline, not as fact. But it's helpful. And we just move forward. So you want to check all the things before you decide if it's an algorithm. And yeah, and never assume. Like, never assume it's the HU just because you think it happened in that time frame. So this is a site. These are all client sites at one point or another. I have the data from them. And if you look, it looks like it's doing really well, this site, right? But if we go to the next frame, whoa, not so good. So
Yeah.
never assume the time frame you're in is the time frame that they're dealing with, right? So always do the 16-month extension. Always look at the data as far back as you can, because they may have had a core update 2 years ago and not realize it, as this one did. You can see on the left-hand side that the first core update drop, and then this is where the other things come in. The second drop is actually where they turned off an ad campaign. So that doesn't have a core. You notice below it doesn't have a Google symbol, so it doesn't have an update there. So never assume that it is the update. Also, never assume that it isn't. But in this case, never assume that your traffic's good if you're only looking at 3 months or 6 months of it. Okay, so just as it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, quack, quack, talks like a duck, it may not be a duck. So this looks like a devaluation here, this one, right? And again, we got to talk about the historical data, but we also have to talk about comparing year-to-year data. I didn't do it in this one, but it's really good to actually compare year-to-year by day-to-day, because you may look like you have a little spike here and here, and they actually are the same because of the date of the week. But if you go forward with this one. So you see year over year similar. So it's not a devaluation, right? So obviously it's not an algorithmic issue, and they haven't lost traffic. And if we match these up, they'd be almost exactly the same. So we go to the next one. So I look at it, I go, well, this is a seasonal company, right? This is like my first look ever when I first looked at it. Seasonal company, and you can see they have same year over traffic, the same slope coming up. And so we expect to see the same graph going forward. This was an outdoor tour company. So they had a definite season every year. And but if you didn't look at the 16-month and you didn't do the year to year, you might have thought they lost traffic. So in this one, we did the year over year and the 16-month, and we know it's seasonality. Those are all those things in that original Google slide, right? Seasonality and year over year. So it may walk like a duck and talk like a duck, but it doesn't mean it's a duck. So you want to make sure you eliminate all these things before you assume it's an algorithm, because the algorithm requires a lot of changes and fixes, and this obviously doesn't. They're doing just fine. All these graphs are real client graphs, by the way, real data. Let me go. So this one also is not update related. This is a technical issue. So one of the biggest things you want to make sure as well is, do you have technical issues? By the way, technical issues are also very tied to core updates. But we see here we don't have a update at that time. There's no update. It's not in the middle of an update. There's just literally no update. So it's not an update related. If it's not in those dates, it's just not. There are Google algorithms that run all the time, but they don't take away that much of your, like 60% of your traffic. May take away 5 or 10%, 20%. So in this case, this was an issue with a head tag where they had HTML in the head and the HTML header, and that broke the head and it stopped reading it past that point when they put in a body tag, which means if you don't do HTML, what it means is they started going to the page, and so they ignored everything below that break. Well, that was their JavaScript, their CSS, so the page couldn't be rendered, and Google will not index pages they can't render. So that's what happened on it. There wasn't every page on the site, but it was those pages dropped there. So technical issues, also JavaScript. So. Oh, yeah, I'm just go past that one. Just a reminder. So technical tip, these are the 3 largest reasons I put 2 here, but there's one more. You had a session on it earlier with Martin. JavaScript, where you can't see the page or it can't see your links. So I always do a Screaming Frog screenshots of all the pages on the site, and I can go through and see if the pages are missing information. And then they also have a really nice comparison where you can look at the raw and the render. And some things have to be in the raw HTML, like your canonical tags, your CSS, your JavaScript. So those can also be the issue, but the biggest issues are HTML and the head tag. I see this all the time because third-party scripts love to write it into your head tag. Facebook is really bad about that. There's a couple other tracking pixels that are really bad about that. And if you run a Screaming Frog or Sightbulb, you'll see it, and they'll let you know that that's happened. And you see a drop at the same time, you know that's getting cut off. Bad migrations are the other reason. So a lot of people do migrations without knowing they need an SEO. And then you're like, we have all this traffic drop. It's like, oh, what did you do? And they're like, well, we just redirected all these URLs. And it's like, okay. And then you go look and like they lost other link value and other things. So those are the 3 main reasons. So it's not the only reasons, but they're the 3 main reasons. This one was a true story, and this one stumped me at the time because there was an update at that time, and I was looking. I just could not figure out why because their site didn't have the issues that normally core update issue devalues you for. They were ranking for nightshade vegetables, and that brought them 80,000 a month. Let me go to the next page. And Google said, no, we're going to change your match when people search for you, and you no longer come up for nightshade vegetables. You come up for nightshade vegetables list, which is, as you can see, a 73,000 traffic difference, right? So you have to look for query shifting. Did Google move you? When they query shift you, which means, so the last algorithm that ranks all the pages in search, in the SERPs, is the neural algorithm. And it's only based on search to text on page. That's all it's based on. Ranking's already been taken care of from the ranking factors. And so sometimes Google goes, oh, I don't think this is a match anymore. People are searching and you don't match that query. So they query shift you, but they query shift you generally to a longer term. And we know most of the time longer terms have less traffic. So make sure you check when you do your site analysis that you didn't have a major drop on a root term like nightshade vegetable. So if we got all that, we know year over year is good, 16-month view is good, technical issues query, and it's not something else crazy. Then we can go to algorithms. And I said it already, so we can skip. I get ahead of myself. So each algorithm is very unique. So helpful content and a spam and core update are all very different algorithms. And so they don't affect the same things on your site. They don't look for the same things, and they don't devalue on the same things. So fortunately, we don't have a lot of algorithms, different ones running right now. But if we go ahead, they just throw everything in the core update now. So we go back and look at the dates here to see which algorithm it is, right? That's running at the time that we have the downturn. We look at the details, how long did it run? There we go. Again, it's not in those dates. It's not your algorithm. Also, I hear this a lot. I see this a lot. People go, but I lost traffic after it ended, after the date. That means something else happened. So like I had a client who rejoined, if we go to the next slide, I think I have it on the next slide. Yeah. So this client got a core update recovery, but then they decreased soon after. And they thought like they were reading that people said, oh, that's because the core update's still going. It's like, no, Google will say generally if they come back and rerun it after the dates. We did another site crawl and they had major technical issue that popped up on their site when they did an update. So generally if it's outside the dates, unless Google has said something, it's another algorithm that Google's running that it's not a named one, it's just one of the daily ones, or you have a technical issue or something of that nature. So they usually use one name but for an update, but also sometimes they use one name for many updates. They kind of love the name core update lately. I like to call everything a core update. So the core update last year in March and April was not a core update by itself. So two of them are listed here. It ran a spam update and a core update. Thanks, Simon. He's looking at Nightshade Vegetables. So actually what ran last year from March till the end of April started with a manual spam action, then a spam rollout, then a core update, which was supposed to have the HCU to update the HCU. I don't think that happened. I'll explain at the end here. Then a core update. And then HCU was supposed to be taken out of the HCU and rolled into the core update. I don't believe that happened, but that was the supposed rollout. So when everyone says core update last year, it wasn't one thing. It wasn't one core update. And people really have to be careful because Google loves to just use one word now. And it could be one, or it could be like this, all these updates over the 2 months. So right now, these are the ones that have run over the last 2 years. I know I'm not touching product reviews or reviews, that's just very isolated. But spam update, core update, and helpful content update. And again, they're very unique, so you know by those things. Algorithm ducks. Okay, so the spam update is very definite. You can go to the sheet that Google has. I have a link there. Go to the spam policies. If you get hit by a spam update, you've done something wrong. You might not have known you've done something wrong, but you've done something wrong. Cloaking, doorway pages, reputation abuse, it's something in the spam list. The good thing is if you go to that list and you just figure out which one you violated, just fix it and you should come back on the next update. And generally speaking, you do always have to wait to the next update, but on a spam one, it may fix itself during the other updates, mini updates that they do. We don't know about.
Do they still like penalize you for cloaking? I think that I've not seen that for a while. Have you?
Cloaking, I haven't had a site get penalized for anything. The only thing lately is AI content. And they in the spam policies, it has something that doesn't say AI content, but it's like mass produced content with a machine. So it's AI content. But it's not just AI content. It's like a lot of it at one time, like 2,000, 20,000 pages. So the core updates. So in 2018, they started with your money, your life sites. And I haven't heard them specify if that's changed ever. And your money, your life sites are just anything that can affect your life. So it can be news, it can be finance, e-commerce, because you do credit cards. So there's just those kind of sites. Anything in the core algorithms can be applied. So if you want to know what those are, just go to look at Google's Starter SEO guide, and they kind of list all those. But if Google doesn't know if a site's your money or your life, and that's come from Gary and John and Marin, they can't look at your site and go, I know this is money or your life. They can't look at the queries that come to the site. They can't see the keywords. So if I'm looking at heart attack and it matches your site and you're ranking for that, then they know that your site's got your money or your life content, right? So generally speaking, when you're diagnosing a core update, you have to look for the terms that dropped because they apply it at the keyword level. And then your page may drop, but you just look at the root terms. So there's one site in the very beginning, they lost like 50% of their traffic. But I looked at the keywords that dropped, right? The root words. So not everyone, but like one or two first words. So nightshade vegetable list, nightshade vegetable gardening, whatever. It'd be nightshade vegetables. And then what you do is you look at the pages that dropped, and then you run those through your crawlers. And we found that they had an old plugin that caused their site to like load. It took 90 seconds for those pages to load. And then they had some other technical issues. And again, it's almost always technical. The other weird thing about core updates is the technical issue is usually very big and has been on the site a very long time. And so my theory on core updates, I know that they do, there's not the only thing that does it technical, but I do in phases when I work with a client. We start with technical, then we work on content, because if the technical is not good, doesn't matter how good the content is, right? But every time when we do the technical, it takes a couple months, and the next update comes out, and they get their traffic all back. So I know that technical is the technical is very, very, very tied to the core updates. But you find the pages affected, you find out what your technical issues are, and you check your content, things like that. And then as long as a client listens to me, they always come back. I'm not how to, and clients that don't listen, that's different. But the clients that listen to me and I worked with them directly to help them fix things, 100% recovery every time. It may take one or two turns just because you may not have hit it early enough. I know a lot of people think that you can change things as the update's rolling. You can't. That's a done deal like a month or so before the update starts. But the core updates is very easy to diagnose just because of that issue. It's like, oh, I dropped on these two root terms, like that one that I was just telling you about, and it turned out they were two folders of lots of their content, two main folders with lots of their content. And we fixed those issues, and they came back completely. There you go. This is the cruelest of all updates Google has ever done. And I wrote something about the ethics of Penguin. So the helpful content update, well, backtrack a little. Matt Cutts said he would never put machine learning into the main algorithms because if it broke, they couldn't fix it. And this is just my belief, but I have a lot of belief behind it. Someone can ask me, hit me up, I'll tell you more details. But the helpful content update was a site-wide devaluation. You lost all your traffic, right? Or it could be 80% of your traffic or 70, depending on how many pages they found. But it's site-wide for the devaluation, but just how many went all the way down. They can't fix it. So these poor publishers, it'll mostly only hit small sites, solo entrepreneurs, and small businesses. You can hear any medium-sized business or large businesses that lost all their traffic or were complaining about not recovering. They had all these guys. I was in touch with a few of them directly, and they had the meeting in Google last year, and Google basically told them, go find another site. We don't know how long it's going to be to fix this, right? Well, the thing that I can't get an answer from Google is if you take your devalued site and you move it to another one, and Google knows it's the same one, they will often devalue the next one. So these people are like solo entrepreneurs, 10, 15 years of content, one person, they have like 10,000 links or 30,000 links. There's nothing they can do to reproduce that site unless they can take their content and they can redirect their links. And if they can't do that, then they don't get their sites back because they're still saying they can't fix this. There are some people very vocal on Twitter who are, yelling at Google, and Google's talking back. So just as of last week, they're still saying it's not fixed. And I don't think it'll ever be fixed because I don't think they know how to fix it. And so, and I have my theories on why there's so small sites got hit. It wasn't like they were trying to get rid of small publishers or something. There's ways that people develop sites at that level that could have triggered something like a compression algorithm and these other things. So anyway, so this one, I won't take this as a client because I know I cannot recover this site. So I'd say to anybody who has this problem, the best thing you can try, because Google won't answer this, is try putting it on a new domain just as it is and then redirecting your links and using your content. Because if you recover, great, and if you get hit again, then that's not an option. But it's a pretty easy thing to do, like WordPress. Just take your content to another theme, put it on another domain, and redirect your links. So this one it just angers me because they've dragged on for so long, not telling people. And here's my main indicator why we know that it didn't work is last year when they were supposed to roll it out with the HCU, with the core update, and update, no HCU sites updated. No HCU sites got back traffic. Well, when they took it out of the main update, and then the core update was going to run with it in it, we would have seen a lift because it would have been off all sites for a very short period of time, but a couple weeks while they move it into the new one, right? Into the main core update. But that never happened. There were no recoveries. So it's very evident from what Google said and what they've done. So I'm just being really not very brief here. I do want people to understand if this is your issue, don't let someone charge you like $10,000 to try to audit it and give you little fixes. Your only fix is going to be right now is to move to another domain, move your content, redirect your links, and hope that Google doesn't penalize it. And if it does, then you can be very, very vocal and say you did the only thing you could do, and why don't they give you guys a break and let you do that? Because they could, they know the classifiers on those sites, so they could allow you to pass through that other one that devalues sites because they tried to move their content after being devalued. So anyway, so that's if we go from there. I feel passionate about that. It just makes me angry. This is the first time they said this about core updates. I just had this in one of my files. They always tell you to core update that there's nothing you can do. You didn't do anything wrong, you know. But someone went up and you went down, so they valued a site more than yours. So core updates, like I said from before, can always be fixed. You just have to identify the issue, and then you have to fix it. And you may have to fix a lot of things because we don't always know what they're targeting on a core update. So Simon, I can do it for 9K. Missed you, Simon. It's good to see you. So this is the debugging drops in Google search traffic page. Everyone should go take a look at it. It's got good detail in there. And I think it was really good that they put this up. It's somewhat 27 pennies. Because they didn't have any information like this before. So site owners can at least get a look and an idea whether someone's taking in the cleaners when they talk about helping them recover from their site. So. And then there's Buddy Kitty again. And yeah, that's it.
Ta-da.
So do we do questions or?
Like we have run out of time a bit, but in the comments that not usually questions as always, but they like agreed. Everyone agreed with you that you are right, that you are talking real things and all these kind of things. So we had like a bit of a funny conversation back and forth in the comments. So actually, I wanted to thank you for joining us today. And now, where can people find you? Just a moment.
If you go to my first slide, I'm Schachinger on all the socials, so you can find me on any social channel with that name, and then LinkedIn, and then I'll put this up on SlideShare. Yeah, it's on the bottom. On the socials, I'm Schachinger.
Okay. What's your favorite? What's your favorite recovery? Did you have anything that you especially liked to recover and it worked wonders?
Oh, my best one, and I can't get into the long story because we don't have time, but basically it was a multi-billion-dollar company. My first day in, I was wondering why their fourth most ranked keyword was XNNX, and found out it was a porn site that was using a vulnerability to boost their traffic. And I convinced them to fix it. And just before Black Friday, we got a manual action. And yeah, 3 weeks before Black Friday, a $2 billion company. But they gave us a list of URLs. And I said, if you just fix these URLs, given who you are, I have a feeling if we send them back, they will delay the full penalty because they'll think we tried to fix it and they're going to give us a little more time. And we did get until mid-December. And I was already working with the developers and we had it all patched up and they got their traffic back in January. I was like, I have questions. You can reach out to me on any of the socials. I'm always happy to chat with people. So, and I have the podcast Webcology, so you can find me there as well with Jim Hedger. So.
And I wanted to ask you something so important about these vegetables. So what was your solution? So the query shifted is not something that you can actually impact, it seems, right? Because it's Google's decision that the query has shifted or often say that the intention might have shifted or something like that. So what is your solution to work with this situation when it's the query shift?
So they only had this like very small section about them, and there was a list on the page. So I just told them to create a hub page for the nightshade vegetable problem. It was about health, and to add content to that, in more specific, be more content focused, topically focused, one idea on a page, because they had kind of pushed it all together. So Google likes clarity. Like if you have a book and you have a table of contents, you know that the subchapters are very specific and relevant to the main chapter. So we kind of did that.
Okay. Do you work with the tools? Some people mentioned that they work with NLP, embeddings, something like encoders. Do you do anything of that?
I give talks on it. I don't
Okay.
generally run the content teams, but I do give them advice on that. So this is where the neural matching algorithm at the end that does the final sort order. That's why that's important. So the neural matching is looking for content on a page, and it's looking for entities that it understands. So that's also why schema can help, because you're telling it what the entities are, and then you're putting them together on the page. And that's why that works. That's why NLP works.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kristine, for joining us today. I need to pass the word to Anton. I think he maybe wants to share something.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kristine, and thank you everyone who was speaking for us today. Everyone who was watching and listening and donating. By the way, we have collected today $771. Which is fantastic amount. Thank you very much. And if you're watching this in recordings, you still can donate. Yeah, thank you very much. Our first conference 2025 is over. And hopefully in a half a year, we'll do one more conference. So anyone who wants to speak, just
Sponsor.
Yes, and sponsor. Yes, absolutely. And sponsor. Please pitch us, Alicia and me. And thank you very much, and have a great day today or night, as it's for me. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Use Zofu.com to grow your in-funnel prompt visibility.
What the hell?
We measure your brand visibility for solution discovery prompts.
Oh, really?
We benchmark how your brand's doing across these prompts.
Nice.
And we show you the resources that ChatGPT uses and cites. We find the most cited page, then we analyze that page's copy, comments, and reviews to find the frequently unanswered questions.
Oh,
Then we
really?
develop survey questions and a testing approach.
What the hell?
Now you can pitch first-party findings and empower publishers to empower their audience at the bottom of the funnel. Let's collaborate.